really did have fun. And if I sounded otherwise on the show, then edit me to make it sound like I had fun, because I did. So.
No, I did. It was good. I had fun too.
I'm glad you two are having fun while I'm at work.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I'm at work too. It's only Marco that isn't, because he's doing my work for me.
Tell me all about it.
That's right. I was suffering. It was just a little bit chilly outside at the outdoor mall when the kids and Aaron were at the Children's Museum in the mall, and I was working on my adorable.
Yeah, it sounds like a hard life.
It was tough. It was very difficult.
Yeah, because it was a little chilly.
Just a touch too chilly. If I'd moved out of the shade, it would have been better, but then I wouldn't be able to see my goddamn screen. So I don't know if it was because I stumbled onto the Wikipedia page for bug out bags. So this is the, I've got to get out of the house now.
What are you bugging out from?
I have no idea. I was doing the show notes for askatp. What's our WWDC EDC? Which is, everyday carry. And then I was trying to find a link for EDC, and then I stumbled on everyday carry on Wikipedia, and that led me to bug out bag. And I was just reading about, blizzards and earthquakes. And
for all the natural disasters that hit Virginia.
Hey, we have not hurricanes in like the Florida sense, but hurricanes in the surprising amount of rain and wind for as far inland as I am sense. And so that can cause some problems from time to time.
Yeah, but I think you're far enough inland that it is merely surprising, not like life-ruining or house-destroying.
9 times out of 10, I would agree. There have been occasions that it's been actually legitimately scary, but yes, you are certainly far more right than you are wrong. But did you know, Marco, that a bug-out bag, or BOB, may also be referred to as a good bag, which is an acronym for Get Out of Dodge, an inch bag, I'm never coming home, a personal emergency relocation kit, or PERK, or a quick run bag, a QRB. Needless to say, someone has been looking at Wikipedia lately, and that someone is this guy.
See, I feel like there's probably a lot of overlap between that community and the, red staters, people who fantasize about zombie apocalypses and watch The Walking Dead, and really, because it's
I wasn't going to bring The Walking Dead into it, but I was just going to make the same point. This is the slightly kinder and gentler version of the fantasy where you're going to be defending your family with your giant collection of firearms. The slightly kinder one is that I'm going to somehow escape disaster when others don't, because I have a well-packed bag, and that will make all the difference.
Right. Nobody prepares a bag like this without a little bit of a fantasy in their head that they someday will have to use it. It's the same thing with buying guns and everything. It's people they fantasize about having a reason to use these things, and they kind of revel in the idea of that. And so that's why I can't even look at everyday carry stuff, because it very quickly turns to knives and guns.
Yeah,
I am very interested in lots of other things that people typically classify as everyday carry. But if you look on Instagram or anything for that, it's quickly knives and guns, very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's funny because I don't know if it's because I've lived in Virginia for a while. I don't know if I was never a Boy Scout, so it's not that. But there's something that appeals to me about the thought of having a bag that I can grab at a moment's notice and know that anything I could reasonably need is within it. And I've talked many, many, many times about what I call my Go Pack, which is all of my nerd. It's like my nerd bug out bag, right? So it's all of my nerd cables.
Right. I have one of those too. And I fantasize about someday needing that micro USB to USB-C cable.
I'm right there with you. But all snark aside, it really is convenient. And I think the difference between what I call a Go Pack and a bug out bag is that a Go Pack you use presumably at least a few times a year. No matter how much or little you travel, you're going to travel at least occasionally. And so at least occasionally you'll use a Go Pack. Whereas I do agree with what you're saying. A bug out bag is hand wringing in a happy way. I can't wait to have that natural disaster so I can use my first aid kit that I spent $350 on that lasts forever. And I don't know. It appeals to me in a sense because I like the preparedness aspect of it, but I don't really see the point,
It's not really preparedness though. Even your adapter bag is, just probably not actually preparing you for anything. But any of those other bags, just in the balance of things that are going to help or hurt in the case of any kind of disaster, the few items you put in that bag are not going to make any difference. It's not unless you can fit food, shelter, and an invulnerable bubble and 3 years worth of shelf-stable food into that bag, it's not, the bag will not make the difference.
Yeah, and the reality is if society ever falls apart that much, we're all just going to be killed immediately. Like we're going to last no time at all.
Like, well, I would have been killed, but I had a bag with some stuff in it.
Okay. Hey,
that did it.
You say you're going to die immediately, but I have plenty of friends with these small arsenals in their homes, which does not make me comfortable.
Yeah, they're all going to kill each other. It doesn't matter, and it's not going to help you.
Yeah, and like, what value will you provide them?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be delicious to eat. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A little gamey.
You'll have this bag they can take very easily from you.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
For real. I don't know. This is all somewhat. Follow me down this tangent. This is all somewhat relevant because last night we had one of the. It's funny as parents how quickly you lose the ability to be woken up overnight. So Michaela is 16 months old, and she has been sleeping through the night for most of those 16 months. And for the times that she wasn't, generally speaking, it was Erin who was going in to nurse her. So, I got to sleep through the night a lot. But last night we had Declan having a bad dream. Then, of course, we had a smoke alarm that decided to go off. And even though the battery from the 9-volt tongue test seemed fine, the smoke detector was dissatisfied with it. So we had to do that, change that. And that was in Michaela's room, which made it all the worse. And then, of course, that woke her up, which made it even worse. And then there was something else that happened. Like all of these are minor. The power flickered. That was where this tangent came from. The power flickered a few times, which is pretty unusual for us these days. And of course, my UPS is going ballistic, and things that are on smart switches, like the fans in the kids' room, are now turning themselves off. And none of these are a big deal. Like in and of themselves, none of them are a big deal. It just so happened that they all decided to hit at once, like 1 hour apart from each other, which was not fun. So I'm a little tired and a little loopy. But I don't know. It just got me thinking, like, what would happen if legitimately, like, our seemingly very vulnerable power grid, like, legitimately just got hacked and shut down? Like, what happened, what was it, around 2004-ish when the Northeast, like, shut down for 2 days or something like that? That sounds terrifying.
I was on my way to work at Staples.
Oh, nice.
I think it happens. I think we didn't have power for like a week, maybe, on Hurricane Gloria, before you guys were born, maybe. You just hang out in your house. And I mean, especially if it doesn't happen in the dead of winter. In the dead of winter, you've got more problems. But places with the dead of winter also have fireplaces, and you get by.
Even that time, like when we had that giant Northeast blackout when I was working at Staples, like it was really inconvenient for the few hours that we were in Pennsylvania that we were out of power, and then it was fine. Like I have, oh geez, I mean I have the amount of like battery capacity and flashlight capacity that I have in my office right here within 10 feet of me is incredible. Like I could keep our phones charged and and at least one room of our house somewhat lit with flashlights for like a week with what I have right here already. And when am I ever going to need it? Like probably never.
Yeah.
And if any of it ever comes up, I'll be really excited to use it. Oh, I have just the battery for this purpose, right? And like that'll happen maybe once every 10 years for an hour. And then it'll never happen after that.
My parents live about 45 minutes from me, and they have this very fancy inverter generator that's enough to power not the entire house, but like a large portion thereof. It's like a 6,000 watt generator or something like that. And my mother-in-law, who is about 20 minutes from me, has a whole home like natural gas generator. And I've really, really, really kicked around the idea of spending something like it was like $2,000 or $3,000, I think, for a fancy inverter generator. And so, and I already have a hookup in the fuse box to plug it in, and I could power whatever portions of the house I wanted. This is like the bug out bag, but even more expensive, right? Because I really, really want to get this like $3,000 generator just so I know that I will never have the problem. But then it's exactly what you were saying earlier, Marco. Then I'm just like fantasizing about the power going out. Like, ooh, maybe tonight's the night. Ooh, it's getting windy. It's getting windy. Should I go get the generator ready? It is so silly. Like, I haven't bought it because I know deep down it's a complete waste of money, especially since we have relatives so close. But I want it.
That's the thing. Like, if you're actually losing power so incredibly frequently that this thing would like pay for itself, that's one thing. But the reality is, like in most places around here, like, where you live too, I'm sure, like you lose power so infrequently and for such short periods that like
right.
Worst case scenario, if you lose power and you like can't stay in your house, and maybe it's like in the middle of winter and it's really cold outside or something like that. So like it's kind of, so you kind of need heat to stay in your house and you don't have it, and it's too cold to just put on sweaters and blankets and everything, and you can't get space heaters and all this other stuff. Then it's like, okay, well then, get in your car and drive somewhere. Like drive as far away as you need to get a hotel room.
Yeah.
How much does that cost for like the one time every 10 years that you'll need to do that? versus like what it costs to get a generator installed.
They should sell people just empty metal shells, like they would never know, right? Just like sell them this thing and it just makes noise and it's very heavy because like it just sits in your house and rots, right? It's waiting out there. You're hoping it's not just like rusting or whatever.
Well, it does more than that. Like I know my in-laws have one, and I think once a week it does a self-test. You know, you have this massive, gas engine thing that once a week goes for like 15 minutes while it self-tests itself. Like these things aren't without their downsides, right? Yeah. Like that's the thing that you have to get installed, get periodically maintained or serviced. It's very intrusive, invasive. It takes space out of your yard or out of your house or whatever. Like, it isn't like a small deal, and it's for a benefit that you probably will never need, or you would need once every 10 years, but then you could just go to the hotel room somewhere and like for way less money and not having that, noise and space and giant thing sitting in your yard for the last decade.
It's not unusual for us to go to Erin's mom's on a Sunday afternoon, and that's when her whole home generator decides to do its self-test. And it is exactly what you described. It's extraordinarily loud. It runs for like 10-ish minutes, and it's very random. And so every time I'm like, what? Oh, right, duh. And it just freaks me out every time. And it's not a big deal. Like in the grand scheme of things, it helps her because she's not remote by any reasonable definition of the word, but she's remote enough that power does go out for her, periodically. And so it does make sense for her to have it. But yeah, for us, where most of the electric lines, not, near-ish us, are in ground, and the one tree that kept knocking out our neighborhood's power during, in the outside, in the above ground section has been trimmed back a couple of years ago. And ever since that tree got trimmed, it has been pretty reliable here. But it was just a few years ago. I don't remember exactly when. I want to say actually it was probably 6 or 7 years ago that one hurricane came through Richmond, and the south side of Richmond, which is not where I am, don't be creepy, they were without power for as much as 2 weeks. And that was surprising. And we knew the hurricane was coming. Like, it wasn't that much of a surprise that it was coming, but it brought far more damage than anyone expected. And so we were fine. This is when we did have a generator that has since died. But we had, I think, didn't have power for like 2 or 3 days or something like that. And like I said, the other side of Richmond didn't have it for as much as 2 weeks, and it was something else. Like, it was intense for a while.
But even then, like, I feel like the solution, we are fortunate that we have some disposable income, right? And so, like, I think the solution is very clearly like, just apply money to this problem until it goes away. Like when it happens, if it happens, right? So like my car can go 300 miles from my house before I have to stop anywhere. So if anything ever happens to the area that I'm in, I can put my family in my car and drive somewhere up to 300 miles away where I can get a hotel room. I know the local hotels are probably going to be very crowded, but I'm sure within 300 miles I can find a room.
But if you had that kind of a problem, though, wouldn't you take the BMW rather than the Tesla? Why on earth would you take the Tesla?
Because I can plug it in anywhere and it will already be full. It will already at all times have that 300-mile range, whereas the BMW might have a quarter tank of gas in it. I don't know.
Sure, but
you can't guarantee like at any given day that the BMW is going to be full.
And that makes sense.
Whereas the Tesla is going to be full.
And I agree with you, but don't you think if there was a risk of a hurricane, hitting the New York or whatever, or a blizzard hitting the New York area, don't you think you would go and fill the BMW if it was really that much of a problem? Because if it were me and I had a Dino Juice car and a Zap Zap car sitting in the garage, I would absolutely choose the BMW just because of the convenience of being able to fill up just about anywhere without having to worry about power.
Plus, you can relive Mad Max, a movie that neither of one of you saw.
I saw Fury Road.
Right, I meant the original. Anyway.
If there is a severe natural disaster, it's more likely to be really hard to get gas than electricity. Like around here, like, with U.S. infrastructure and everything, there's frequently runs on gas stations before major hurricanes, or where like you can't get gas. You have to wait in very long lines to get gas. Because everyone else has the same idea. Oh, I better fill up my car, right? Like before any kind of major hurricane, it's actually very hard to get gas around here. Whereas like you can almost always find power somewhere, either in your house or if you have lost power, like within 300 miles, it's probably easier to find power than gas during a natural disaster, honestly.
I want to argue with you, but I don't know enough about this to be able to make any sort of compelling argument. That's all right.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com/ATP and enter offer code ATP at checkout to get 10% off. Make your next move with a beautiful website from Squarespace. Now, these days, everything needs a website. It's table stakes. No matter what you're doing, a new business or a new hobby, or even just a website for yourself to show off your portfolio or whatever else, you need a website for pretty much everything these days. And a lot of times, website hosting in the past has been difficult. You've had to get your own server, install some package on it, keep it updated, keep it running, keep it up. It was really hard in the past, and Squarespace makes all of that super easy. And even if you're making a more complex kind of site, something like a storefront, Squarespace has digital or physical storefront hosting built into all their plans. If you want to host a podcast, you can do that on Squarespace too, just as easy as any other site. And of course, all the basics are there too. They have great support. They take care of updates and uptime and support and all that stuff for you, so you don't have to worry about it. You focus on making your site with their intuitive, easy-to-use tools. You don't have to have any coding experience or technical know-how to use Squarespace. It's wonderful. If you're setting up a site for somebody else, Squarespace is a great option there too, because then when they need support, they can go to Squarespace and not you. So it's wonderful whether you're making a site for yourself or someone else. Now, you can get started today at squarespace.com/ATP. Start building your website with a free trial with no credit card required. When you decide to sign up, make sure to head back there, squarespace.com/ATP, and use offer code ATP to get 10% off your first purchase. Once again, squarespace.com/ATP, code ATP for 10% off your first purchase. Make your next move with a beautiful website from Squarespace.
All right. First and foremost, I need to remind you. No, I'm just kidding. We're all done with that. Don't worry. Thank you, everyone who bought shirts and hats and polos and sweatshirts and everything else. Really and truly, from the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate it. I would like to just vindicate myself. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Whatever. I'd just like to congratulate myself that within, I think, an hour or two of the sales closing at Cotton Bureau, we got tweets from people saying, "Oh, God, I forgot. Is there anything I can do?" You guys think I'm just saying that to be a jerk, to be a big jerk. You think I'm saying that to be mean? Oh, no. It was within an hour or two that there were poor people. And I mean that genuinely, that these people were upset. And I do feel bad for them. But that's why we reminded you. So anyway, thank you, everyone who bought shirts and hats and everything else. I really, and I know my two co-hosts really do appreciate it. And I am super amped to hopefully see some of this walking around the San Jose area in just a couple of weeks, actually. It's coming up real soon.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
I wondered if Casey would find a way to get mad at listeners again, even though the sale is over, and he found a way.
What I think.
Why don't you stop yelling at them? They just want to, they're just buying merchandise. You don't have to yell at them every week to shame them for not buying in time. I don't know. Anyway,
wait, so which one of us is bad cop? Which one of us is good cop? Which week is this?
You're the bad cop. I'm trying to be the good cop here. Thanks for buying our stuff. Hope you like it. I'm not going to be mean to you and yell at you.
Hey, sometimes you need some tough love. I do want to congratulate a certain co-host of mine, even though he is being bad cop, and say that
you're the bad cop. I was the good cop.
No, whatever. It's really just like Rec Diffs. Anyway, I would like to congratulate John for his very amusing, what you have put in the show notes as frame game fun, which if you don't follow John on Twitter, first of all, you're making a mistake. But second of all, John was giving away codes for free T-shirts. And the way he was doing this was by putting increasingly, or I guess decreasingly, whatever, smaller and smaller photos or clips of frames of movies into tweets and saying the first person to correctly identify them will win a free T-shirt code. And I didn't know most of these movies.
This contest is not for you two.
Yeah,
obviously.
I know. And even the one, like you had Jurassic Park at one point.
Don't ruin the surprise.
Oh, sorry. You had something at one point that I had seen. Once I saw the full frame, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But man, just looking at each of these pictures individually, I didn't have the faintest idea. I presume, Marco, you are also clueless?
I recognized zero of them, to nobody's surprise.
Yep, same story here.
Yeah, so we get these codes, and you want to give them away to fans, right? Because what else are you going to do with them? But you want to try to make it fun, or I don't know. I've tried a whole bunch of different ways. I used to do like trivia questions where the answer was like take the first letter of the first word and the last letter of the last word, and then those are two characters that you replace in the promo code. So I would put in the promo code with a bunch of X's and, and then I would just, there would be like trivia questions or whatever, but it's really, really hard to ask anything, especially trivia questions or tech questions that people can't Google for in 2 seconds. And I always wanted the person who won it to be somebody who knew something, not somebody who was just good at Googling. And so, of course, I try to Google them myself before I did them, but it's just lots of really fun, interesting questions. You realize, oh, they can Google that in 2 seconds. So everyone's, in fact, if you Googled it, you might get it before someone who was like, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. What's that thing? So I tried a couple of different things this time. One of them was doing drawings. Like I actually took out my Apple Pencil and drew something on my iPad and said, like, identify this thing that I drew. Because if you take a photo of a regular thing, people can just do like a reverse Google image search and find similar pictures. And it tells them what it is. But if you do a line drawing, all Google finds is just a bunch of other line drawings that are totally unrelated, except that they're white backgrounds with black lines. So I did that, and that worked. But I really didn't have any more ideas about things I could draw. So I came up with the frame game thing, where I think it mostly worked for the intended purposes. I'm taking, a frame of a movie, and I'm taking a very, very small portion of it. Like, incredibly small, but it's not randomly chosen. If it was like a computer that said, here's a movie, pick a random frame, and then pick a random square that's like, a centimeter by a centimeter, nobody would get it. Because given a random section of a random frame, it could be anything. It could be like a piece of blue sky or a green leaf, how you can identify the movie, right? So the whole point of the game is I would try to pick the smallest piece that I could, but strategically chosen from a frame that is significant, from a movie that I think people will know, and from a portion of that frame that I think will evoke the movie. So one of them, in case you already read it before, the Jurassic Park one, it's an iconic scene from the movie, and if you see a portion of it, you can mostly tell what it is, because it's like some kind of scaly skin, it was a dinosaur, surprise, and then some sort of like man-made lines, like a thin white line, then a black field, and then a thing with a red with a little lighter thing around it. But it's a particular color scheme. Just that portion of colors next to something that looks like dinosaur skin should bring to mind that scene. And sure enough, from this picture, it looks like nothing. Instantly people get it. They're just like, oh, Jurassic Park. Like I post a thing and then like I refresh my Twitter client and there's the answer. Like I just scroll like a little bit and there's the answer. So people were getting them really, really fast. I think the best one was the one I have in the show notes. If you guys can look at it on the left, it's like a smudgy orange square with some black stuff on it. And the best thing about that one is that it's one of those things where out of context, like especially if surrounded with like a white background, it just looks like nothing. It looks like mud, right? But if you see the full frame, that part that I'm showing you is like the brightest part of the frame. You would think it's basically like the sky and sunlight, but it's like when you do that optical illusion and you're like, these two things are the same color. And you're like, no way, they're not the same color. And then you take like a little piece of paper that just has a hole punched out of it, and you just put the little piece of paper so you can just see that region, and then you slide it over so you can see the other region. You're like, oh, I see. Without the surrounding stuff, they totally are the same color. Anyway, that one was great because if you don't know the movie and don't, know why it's famous, you would never get it, but people got it instantly. I think there was only one that really stumped people, and that was where I misdirected by grabbing a portion of a frame that had a thing that's like, it was in the background. Or that's kind of mean, but I figured people might have noticed it in the background, but they didn't. But, people got all of them eventually, and the thing is, you can't really Google them. If you try to Google image search on any of these little snippets, you come up with nothing. So I enjoyed that, and I think I'm going to do it more in the future, unless someone can come up with some other way to defeat Google while also rewarding people for obscure pop culture and or tech knowledge.
Yeah, I thought it was a very clever way of doing it, and I was enjoying just watching along with the whole thing. But yeah, most of these I didn't have a clue what they were.
Oh, the earring one was good too. Like I did lots of eyeballs and stuff. But then I did one that was showing like someone's ear with an earring in it, and it was like the Shawshank thing. After all, how often do you look at a woman's earring? Like there are lots of famous scenes where you're like, oh, I know that person, I know that actor, I know this famous scene. But do you know what earrings they were wearing? I just put the earring and the ear up there. Instantly, people got it. People are amazing. Someone was tweeting like, should be like the collective wisdom of people on the internet versus the world's most powerful AI. And I think the internet would give them a run for the money.
was having a conversation with somebody once. There's a subreddit or something like that where you can put up a picture of something somewhere, and it can be as obscure as like a portion of a carpet of a hotel. And the whole like shtick or game of this subreddit is to try to determine where on the planet that picture was taken. And according to whoever it was that was telling me this story, it was stupefying how accurate these people can get. Like based on just infinitesimally small pieces of information, they can find exactly like which room of a hotel somebody was in or something like that. Maybe I'm exaggerating some, but you get the point I'm driving at. It's just, it is unreal what the hive mind of the internet, when it puts its hive mind together, can do. It's just tremendous. All right. Just earlier today, I believe it was, we heard some news from Apple with regard to Intel CPU vulnerabilities. And I forget the like marketing names for these things, but this was the thing.
Zombieland or something?
Yeah, this was the thing with predictive execution. Is that right?
It's another one like that. It's a new one, but it's along the same vein.
Yeah, similar to Meltdown and
Spectre,
yeah. Spectre, that's it, yeah. Yeah, very similar to those, where basically it's exploiting some of the side effects of predictive execution and faults and stuff the way Intel CPUs work. John, I tried to read the paper right before we started here, and I honestly had a hard time figuring it out. John, did you actually have a better understanding of this?
I didn't put it in here for us to dive into the nitty-gritty details, just to like think about to revisit this topic, because we talked about it more last time. There's situations where Intel CPUs, where if you can get them to run anything, you can read information that you weren't supposed to be able to read based on the effect of you running your thing, like whether it's timing or like I said, faults or other things. Like the side effects of what you're running let you determine something about the world. And once you have a tiny little tool like this, like, well, if I do this in just this right way and either look for this side effect or check this timing, I can tell whether the first bit of this thing that I'm not supposed to be able to read is a 1 or a 0. And then if I do it a certain other way, I can tell the second bit and the third bit and the fourth bit. And then computers that are great at doing stuff repeatedly, then you're off to the races. And now you're reading bits of information that you weren't supposed to be able to see, which are probably mostly garbage, but you just keep running it and just read everything that's in there. And eventually you can start to extract interesting information that might be in memory or in caches or whatever. And this has plagued Intel CPUs for a little while now. And the first time it went around, it was like, okay, well, Intel CPUs have this problem. But ARM CPUs that Apple uses in its phones don't, because the ARM CPUs Apple's using are generally simpler and didn't have the same speculative execution logic, or didn't have hyperthreading, or were basically like the features that were being exploited didn't exist in the ARM CPUs. Now this one, I assume, is the same type of deal, like where people say, oh, well, this is why Apple should switch to ARM, because they wouldn't have to deal with all these Intel problems. And there's two parts to that. One is that there's always fixes for these things of like change something about either the operating system or the microcode in the CPU to avoid the situation. But those solutions are getting increasingly onerous. They were already kind of onerous with the Meltdown and Spectre thing, but now for this one, Apple has a support article that explains what to do to avoid this. And it's like, turn off hyperthreading on your CPU. Right? That'll do it. If they're exploiting some aspect of hyperthreading, you just turn it off. It'll be fine. But turning off hyperthreading is bad. In Apple's document, they're saying, this is straight from their thing. Testing conducted by Apple in May of 2019 showed as much as a 40% reduction in performance. This is Apple saying this. This is not like a sensational site saying, oh my goodness, 40% reduction in performance. As much as a 40%. Anyway, that's bad. The whole point of using an Intel CPU is because it has all these features to make them faster. And if you have to disable those features for security to make them slower, that's bad. And now I don't know if Apple's latest and greatest ARM CPUs have similar features that could be similarly exploited. This paper isn't focusing on ARM. For all we know, there could be a paper that comes out next week or next month or next year on how to exploit similar things in the most advanced ARM CPUs that either exist already or are going to exist. So it's not like ARM is magically immune because it starts with a different letter or because it's got the Apple magic. But both Intel and Apple are now well aware of this type of problem, and presumably in all their new and upcoming CPUs, they're trying to address it as best they can. But I think this is interesting in that it's just another nudge in the direction of getting Apple off Intel. Again, not because ARM CPUs are magically great, but because if an Apple CPU has this problem, I bet Apple feels better about it than if Intel does, because Apple is highly motivated to fix its own CPUs for its own products, and Intel is slightly less motivated. It's more motivated about protecting its business and all this other stuff, and maybe it doesn't view Apple as an important customer if it knows they're already going to bail. This is why Apple wants to own and control the core technologies, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing that I want to talk about this is, I think I saw a couple of things like, well, this is, if you're executing code, it can do all this stuff and get it all your memory, but just don't run any strange programs on your computer and you'll be fine. Like it's not a thing that someone can use to break into your computer. But as far as I'm aware, and again, this would have, I don't know if you saw it when you were looking at the paper, Marco, that you just need to execute anything on the CPU. So one thing that we execute on our CPU all day long is JavaScript in web pages. And I think a lot of these papers, perhaps also including this one, have a demonstration of the exploit using JavaScript on a web page. And so, yeah, it's not like you have to download a piece of malware. I'm not sure if it's this one or the other things, but if you can just run JavaScript and exploit this, that's really bad. That's really, really bad. Now, to be clear, as they point out, there are no exploits in the wild that do anything with this. And just because you can read this information, you'd have to do a lot of reading and transmitting that back to something that can process it and figure it out. And like it's a little bit of a road from this exploit to breaking into someone's computer, but it's not that long of a road, because as we browse the web on our computers with Intel CPUs, we're executing JavaScript all day long, and that JavaScript could be mining for Bitcoins, or it could be searching our memory for encryption keys, or who knows what it's doing. So as these stories come out, I think a lot of, if you're not a tech nerd and not following these things, you might not know about them, but if you know a little bit, you'd be like, what can I do? What should I do to protect myself against this? And the answer is like, it's not much you can do. Like, you can do what's in the Apple support article. They have you boot your computer with some NVRAM args that slow your CPU way down by disabling features. You could do that, but is that going to protect you? Or is that just going to protect against this particular bug and you're just waiting for the next one? Like, it's one of those situations where it's bad and there's not really much we can do about it except not use our computers with Intel CPUs, I suppose, or hope there aren't similar exploits to ARM ones. I feel like this is, I think we said this last time, it's worse than Heartbleed, because at least Heartbleed, you could patch a buggy piece of software everywhere, and even that was a pain. This is like a hardware problem, and you can't really change the hardware that's in all of our computers other than disabling features, and even that might be complete protection. So I don't have any good advice for people. Like, I'm not going to recommend everyone slow down their CPUs, but I'm also not going to say that you're safe, because you're not, and we're not. So I guess we'll all just hang on here and wait for the new products with new CPUs that avoid this. Well, actually, I don't have to worry, because all these bugs only apply to CPUs made after 2011. So I'm actually safe. But because my 2008 Mac Pro,
your computer is so primitive that it has none of these.
There's no hyper-threading. Yeah. It does have speculative execution, but apparently no hackers can't be bothered to find exploits in 2008 CPUs. So if you're using a 10-year-old computer like me, you're actually safe, but everyone else should be real worried.
Well, except isn't your software probably riddled with vulnerabilities that are no longer being patched?
Nah, it's fine. I mean, I have the latest Safari and everything. Like, everything's fine.
Yeah,
sure?
I think I do. Let me see. What is the latest Safari? Everyone go to your About Safari window.
Why don't you tell us what you have before we tell you? And you're like, oh, yeah, totally.
I have a 11.1.2.
I have 12.1, 14.607.1.40.1.4.
Well, I don't have the newest, but I think they're still doing security patches. To 11.
Funny how the story changed. Yeah. Well, it's not the
I have the newest Safari. Well, it's almost the newest.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, they might still be updating. I think they are still security patching the 11 version. So I do have a software update pending. I should see what that is.
Oh, my word.
I was about to go to system preferences, but that's not where the software updates are in this operating system.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, it's just the Kindle app updating. Never mind.
John, I'm not sure my body is really ready for the 14 straight episodes that we spend talking about whatever Mac Pro is released, either loving it, hating it, critiquing it, being hypercritical about it, whatever. But at this point, your computer is so ancient that I am willing to take the fall for you, John, and deal with these 14 straight episodes of Nothing But Mac Pro, just so you have something built this millennium.
I don't think it'll be that many episodes, but the real problem is after Marco buys it, you have to get like So we'll talk about it, then we'll buy it, and we'll talk about how we bought it, all right? And then Marco will talk about some weird problem that he has with it, and then Marco will talk about his disillusionment with it, and then Marco will talk about why he sold it and replaced it with something. Whereas I won't say anything else after I get through the initial stuff. I'm hoping anyway.
That's possibly true. I will concede that much.
So Marco, you're gonna have to deal with more Mac Pro talk from Marco in the long term.
That's probably
and
true.
the case he buys for it, like the backpack he puts it in.
Mm-hmm.
How it doesn't work with his weird Microsoft keyboard.
Yeah.
How he can't plug in his amps.
We are sponsored this week by Marine Layer. For 15% off your first order, visit marinelayer.com and enter promo code ATP15 at checkout. Marine Layer makes really nice clothing, and they really specialize in softness. When they say their stuff is soft, they really mean it. It's not just like, oh, that's nice. You forget about it instantly kind of soft. It is like, wow, how did they make this even this soft? I'm never taking it off. That's how soft it is. So it turns out the softest t-shirts are made from trees. Micromodal, which is found in Marine Layer's signature fabric, is made from recycled beechwood. The pulp production is self-sufficient, which makes their tees sustainable, eco-friendly, and incredibly soft. I gotta say, when we first did Marine Layer sponsorships maybe about 3-4 months ago, I had just gotten their stuff and I was impressed. I'm like, okay, this is soft. But I thought how soft is it really going to be after a few washes? Well, they've been in my regular rotation now. I've heavily worn the t-shirts I got from them at 3-4 months ago, and they are still remarkably soft. I am shocked at the level of softness, durability, I guess if that's a thing, that you get out of Marine Layer's clothes. They're amazing. They're also just easy to shop with. Their return policy is insanely good. You can return pretty much anything for up to a year, so they really stand by their clothes. You get free shipping and free returns on all U.S. orders. And they even, on some of their most popular stuff, they even make in-between sizes, like between medium and large, they make a marge. And between large and XL, there's a larger. Because, sometimes you're in between sizes. It's wonderful. Check out Marine Layer. It is an amazing storefront for amazing clothes. They're incredibly soft, and it's super easy to order from them. So check it out today, marinelayer.com, and you can get 15% off your first order by using promo code ATP15 at checkout. Thank you so much to Marine Layer for sponsoring our show.
Steve Troughton-Smith had an interesting tidbit. This is actually a few weeks ago now, I think, about macOS 10.15, which is the forthcoming version, house cleaning. And so his tweet reads, Dashboard isn't the only thing gone in 10.15. Sorry, John. So is 32-bit app and plugin support, Carbon, Ink, QuickTime 7 and QuickTime plugins. Sorry, John. PPTP, which is a VPN protocol that I guess is really insecure, but is very convenient, and hardware RAID. But you will get Python 3.7, Ruby 2.6 at least, says Steve. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this other than I am surprised some of this stuff lasted as long as it did.
Did anyone else know that Ink was still in there?
I knew it was in there, but I've never actually seen or used it.
The last time I saw or used it is when I wrote about it in a macOS 10 review. Honestly, if you ask me now, I don't even remember how to find it. But it's still in the operating system right now. Yeah, this looks like the 64-bit transition was a good time to kind of clean house and get rid of old stuff, but they didn't deprecate the 32-bit. So this is kind of like the other shoe dropping on the 64-bit transition for the Mac, which was so long ago, most of us barely remember it. So, yep, we went 64-bit. And then eventually all that 32-bit stuff's not going to run. And that's not a problem if that stuff was also updated to 32-bit, but everything updated to 64 rather. But everything that wasn't updated to 64-bit is stuff that Apple doesn't want anymore. So QuickTime, not updated because it's not going to continue. Hardware RAID, I guess they're not into it anymore. Carbon already, we know, didn't get 64-bit famously a while back. Dashboard, I mean, that should just go away, period. I say this as someone who uses Dashboard every day. I'd use it every day, but it's obviously not maintained in any possible way. It's only been getting buggier over time. So it's if you're not going to keep developing that software, don't keep including it with the operating system. And I don't know if there's a 32 or 64-bit issue there, but this could be one of the big Mac operating systems to leave behind a lot of stuff. And I'm hoping there'll be some way to run VMs or something to be able to access old software that you need to just use briefly for some reason or another. Even if it's just, I don't know what I'm going to replace QuickTime 7 with. I mean,
FFmpeg?
Maybe like I'll end up just Googling and searching Stack Overflow for FFmpeg incantation strings, but that's not.
Isn't that the UI to FFmpeg?
I know.
Pretty much. Hey man, I have a whole folder in Notes that's all like my recipe book for FFmpeg, and it has saved me countless hours because a lot of this over time I've learned, but there's a lot that it's literally like casting a spell. And so having this like series of examples and whatnot in my Notes app has really saved me.
Yeah, but in the process of saving you countless hours, how many hours has it taken to figure out the correct commands the first time?
Oh, totally. Exactly right. Yeah, it's many, many, many hours.
I don't really use QuickTime Player 7 for too much. Like, it does much more than I use it for. And for people who don't know, who haven't been longtime Mac users, and they think all QuickTime 7 does is like save in different formats or something, and have a plugin structure so you can play different formats. It does that, but it also lets you arbitrarily cut, copy, and paste sections of media, not with a particularly nice interface, but it lets you do it. It doesn't just let you, like the replacement that uses AV Foundation, it doesn't just let you trim the ends. It lets you cut, copy, and paste anywhere in there. You can paste one track on top of another track and overlay them, so you can add a new soundtrack to a portion of a thing. Like, you don't have to just append or like slice in the middle and insert. You can extract tracks and save them out into separate files and then copy and paste from them. Like, it's like a kind of like a blind video editor where you don't get a iMovie or Final Cut Pro style timeline. You just get a single bar with regions on it, but you can do a surprising amount of things. But mostly what I use it for is to extract tracks and to change formats. So I could probably use FFmpeg for that. But really, it's a nice player. The controls don't float over the movie, so you can see the movie and go a frame at a time when you're watching the Star Wars trailer for the 19th time. Sorry, the Star Wars teaser, because I don't watch the trailers. It's brush metal and it's silly and all that stuff, but I'll miss it. And I have a bunch of plugins that let you play stuff. From the playback front, I think this is a good time to talk about alternatives to QuickTime Player 10X, whatever, just for playing stuff. Like, forget about all the other features I talked about. Because QuickTime 7, with a whole bunch of plugins, could play almost any format. And since that's going away, if you just left with the QuickTime Player 10 or X, it can only play like the handful of formats that AV Foundation deals with, and not all these weird, obscure formats and container formats that we might want to play. You can use FFmpeg to transform them, but who wants to transcode things?
Casey does.
First of all, yes, I love transcoding. It's my favorite thing to do. But second of all, you can use FFplay, which is a truly awful way to just play stuff that FFmpeg can read. But that is not the spirit of what you're after. And I think the spirit of what you're after is, I don't know how to pronounce this, but IINA, yes, which is basically just a GUI front end to FFmpeg as far as I'm aware.
I'm not sure what the guts are, but the app itself, it's not particularly Mac-like, but it has enough of my minimum set of features. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it either, but it's nice because it's quick to command space to, because not many other applications begin with a double I. But the UI is just like a little rectangle. I think it might have rounded corners, which I don't like. But anyway, and it plays the video, but it's got lots of options. And it has so many options that it lets you like export a config file with all your preferences, so you don't have to reset them elsewhere, which is, like I said, not very Mac-like.
That's amazing.
But the most important thing it has, like out of the box, like a lot of other video players, it doesn't do what I want in terms of navigating the video. What I want is spacebar to play pause, which it does, but then I want the left and right arrow keys to go a frame at a time. And very often the app will decide, the right arrow key is skip forward 5 seconds. The left arrow key is skip back 1 second. I don't want that. I want a single frame. Well, in this app, IIANA, whatever the hell it's called, you can just change the configuration and say, I want the right arrow key to be move forward 1 frame, which is probably some FFmpeg command that it's sending on the scenes or whatever. And it does it. And so you can just set it up the way you want it, and it plays movies, and you can scale them at different sizes, and it plays every format you can throw at it, and every container format I've thrown at it, and it does a fine job. So that is my current replacement for playback. And my current replacement for editing is nothing, is Casey, I guess. Is Casey's FFmpeg file. And iMovie, I suppose. But honestly, iMovie has very limited options, and I don't have a working copy. Do I have I might have Final Cut Pro 4, but I don't think it still runs. I'm probably going to end up buying Final Cut in the 64-bit era if I can't do basic video editing anymore, but I'm holding off on that.
Can I put out a request to the audience? I have a quest that I don't want to undertake myself. I'm hoping the audience can do this for me. What I want that I haven't been able to find in my admittedly zero research is like every video editing app out there, from the simple to the complex, like from Apple's built-in stuff all the way to things like Final Cut and beyond. Every video editing app seems to want to put you into this project workflow where, like, to do anything to a video, you have to first make it into a project, and then it copies the file God knows where and takes up God knows how much disk space, and you need to then create an event within the project, and it's like all that stuff. Like, I hate dealing with that kind of structure. Like, what I want is to occasionally make small edits to videos, like what QuickTime Player 7 would do, but even beyond that a little bit if possible. So, like, I want basically, I think, like, preview for videos, like the way preview allows you to make small image edits, like just simple stuff like cropping, rotating. Like, if I accidentally shoot a video and it's the wrong orientation, let me rotate it. Like, even Apple's built-in Photos app doesn't let you do that. Like,
I couldn't find how to rotate a video in iMovie either. It's probably hiding in there somewhere, but it's not obvious.
What I want is a simple video app that lets you just open a video file, perform some basic operations, whether it's cropping, trimming, rotation, and not just 90-degree rotation. Like, what if the video is tilted a little bit and I want to rotate it like 3 degrees and crop into whatever can fit there. Ideally, even basic color and exposure correction, basic audio correction, maybe, like basic operations that you might want to do to a video. Just open a video file, perform those operations, and save the file, not adding it to any library or project in the process. I want that to exist. I don't know if it already does, but I have yet to find it.
I have that problem with the size. Like, when I do my Destiny videos, I have gigs and gigs and gigs of video, and then I make like a 3-minute video out of it. And I don't want those gigs of video hanging around, but I do want the original clips in the original format. So I would like to losslessly clip out just the parts that I have, like sort of do I think Final Cut used to have this feature, maybe it still does, where you tell it, okay, I'm done with the edit, discard any media not used in the edit, but keep like all the media losslessly that contributes to the final thing, so I can remake videos.
That's interesting.
I don't know if iMovie does that. If it does, I don't know how to make it do it. So I just have my disk, slowly filling with gigs of Destiny videos, which is probably untenable long term. I mean, that's why eventually I'm going to have to get Final Cut and learn how to use it in some way, but I'm holding off on that as long as I possibly can. I mean, I might as well wait until like the ARM Macs come out and get the ARM version of Final Cut, right?
Something like that. Man, this actually does sound, Marco, exactly like what I would like for not, the YouTube videos that I'm occasionally doing but
we're still telling ourselves that, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I would love this sort of thing, but I don't need a project right now, so stop trying to put bad thoughts in my head.
Yeah, iMovie, speaking of projects, iMovie is worse than even you described, Marco, where you have to make a project for stuff. Again, unless I haven't figured it out, iMovie, you hit the little plus thing to make what is going to be a new project, and you get a little empty area, and you can drag in clips and do all this stuff and so on and so forth. But until you hit like the left arrow navigation, like the back navigation in the upper left, I can't figure out a way to name the project. When you hit the little left arrow to go back to the project screen, it says, oh, and by the way, you should name this thing, because it's called like My Project until you go back. So what I end up doing is I go into the project, then immediately go back so I get to name it, and then go back in again. It's a strange flow where it doesn't ask you what you want to call the thing and it's iMovie's all auto-save, right? It's like iOS style, so there's no saving or anything. So you're just there working at it for a really long time, and it's just called My Movie for like the entire time you're doing it until you're basically done. And you're like, oh yeah, I have to name this thing. It's very strange. And again, not particularly Mac-like. I see what they're going for. Most of the time, I kind of like the autosave nature until I get too bold with my undo redo. You ever do that? I do in text editors sometimes, where if you're in a good text editor, I use kind of undo redo as fast forward and rewind. So I will do a bunch of stuff, and then I'll be like, did I forget something? What was that like before? And then I will just hold down undo for a while and watch my changes go rewinding through history and rewinding through history. And then what I'll do is I'll get back to some state. I'm like, oh yeah, this used to be like this, and I wanted that line, so I'll go grab that line and copy it, right? But if in the course of copying that thing, I like accidentally hit the space bar or hit the delete key or move the text or something,
Oh, then you've lost your undo history.
Oh, no.
That's right. Now I've hosed my undo history, and now I can't redo. I mean, I'm so paranoid I will have saved it, and I have my editor configured to save a backup copy every time I save. So I've never actually lost stuff this way, but sometimes it's frustrating. You blow your redo stack because you're 700 items back in undo because you've been holding it down for 3 seconds, and now all that's gone, and you have to go find the save that you made just before you did the undo. Yeah, I feel like that when I'm using any of these sort of autosave apps where I can undo and redo, but I can't even revert to a previous version because there's no saving. And if it did save, what would it save? Like to your point, Marco, like the project file, does that have all the media inside of it? Did it leave the media where it was? Is it just referencing it? Who the hell knows? Like my awareness of what iMovie is doing under the scenes is very low. All I know is that it needs lots of disk space.
All right, so we pouring one out for Carbon, for anything else?
I was thinking. The reason I was thinking about this is like, what crap on all of our computers is going to break that we're not even thinking about? Like, I suppose we could all run Activity Monitor and look at all the 32-bit apps, but the one I was thinking about recently, I was actually kind of panicking about because I saw people fretting about Adobe like doubling the prices on their subscriptions to their various apps because they can. And I was like, well, I don't have a subscription. I bought the last version of Photoshop that you could like download that was just like, it will run by itself. I think it runs without a network connection. It's Adobe Photoshop CS6 I bought because I was aware at the time that it was probably or was known to be the last version that's not Creative Cloud infected and stuff. This is before they went super duper subscription for everything, I think. I'm like, oh my God, is CS6 32-bit? As far as I can tell, it's not. I think it is 64-bit, so I think I'm safe, but I'm paranoid about it breaking because A, I don't want to buy Photoshop again, and B, you can't even buy Photoshop anymore. As far as I can tell, you cannot buy Photoshop. You can just rent it along with like a bunch of other apps that you don't want for like $10 a month. And I love Photoshop. It's how I prefer to do any image editing just because I've been using it so long. But I don't use it $10 a month worth. I use it like once every 2 months or something, or sometimes I'll use Photoshop to crop something. Like I'm just used to Photoshop. You could do that in preview. There's no reason to use Photoshop. I have Acorn. I have a whole bunch of other. Why the hell am I using Photoshop to crop something? Because I'm used to Photoshop. That's why I do it. And so I'll be sad if I can't run it, but I'm not going to pay $10 a month for it. So I really hope CSX keeps running. But as far as I can tell, other than all of my old Mac games breaking, what else is new? I don't think I'm going to be missing any major piece of software. What about you guys? What do you think is going to break?
Nothing that I can think of.
I mean, I'm looking through my system information list of all the 32-bit apps. But if anyone forgot, if you go to System Information under Software Applications, there's a column there called 64-bit (parentheses Intel), and so you can see all the things, and anything that says no in that column won't work in the next version of macOS. And for me, it's mostly just a whole bunch of ancient Adobe binaries from like old installations of Adobe stuff, but like not the apps, just like installers and utilities and stuff like that happen to be dumped there. I don't think I'm going through that. I don't think there's anything here besides QuickTime Player 7 that I ever actually launch.
I have a ton of stuff, which I didn't realize, that is not 64-bit. But as I'm looking through it, it's like a graveyard for all the abandoned iOS projects I've done since literally 2011. Like all of this stuff is stuff that I haven't looked at in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. There's a whole bunch of copies of Fast Text apparently floating around somewhere on my drive that are not 64-bit. No way. There's a Google Talk plugin that I don't think exists anymore. The stuff that you were saying from Ecamm, that seems to be most of it. Unrar X, if you were to ever find something that falls off the back of a truck, which I would never do, that is convenient. I'm sure there's something more modern and better now. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Can't copy and paste from the system report window? That is not a good Mac app. Not a good... Anyway, I have a lot. I think about half of the things listed in that little window.
That's not surprising.
Are there? But it's tons of crap. Stuff from Windows XP. Why the hell is it even showing that? It's probably like VMware exposing that, I suppose.
I would guess. Is your processor 64-bit, John, or is it too old to be 64-bit?
Yeah, no, it's 64. Disco's not going to work anymore. The iWork Tour.
Oh, wow.
WWDC Bingo app. I Halo's not going to run it. Yeah, all the games are going to break, obviously. That's probably going to be the biggest loss. Not that I play Mac games a lot, but every once in a while I launch one and play with it. Just those Mac games are either made by porting companies that don't exist anymore. If they do exist, there's no way they're going to update them. There's never going to be 64-bit ports of any of that stuff. That's kind of sad. That's why I hope there's a VM solution or something like that, because these games don't take a lot of power. Like they could run fine in emulation, not emulation, but you know what I mean, in some kind of virtualized environment. I don't know. I don't even know if VMs would target that type of scenario. On an OS that doesn't allow 30-bit executables, run a VM that can somehow run 32-bit. I don't even know if they can do that, but I hope somebody does something. Oh, iWeb's 32-bit. The backup application, remember that? She had like a little umbrella when Apple made a backup application.
That was before my time, I think.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of thing where you can plan and you can think what's going to break, and I'm sure the Apple installer will have a stage that like tells you these are the apps that aren't going to run anymore. They tend to be pretty good about that. But at that point, like, what are you going to do? Stop the install? I mean, save a list of them, take a screenshot, take a picture of your screen with your phone to remember which applications. I mean, you'll find out when you kind of like I used to find out when I'd upgrade it to any of the versions. I upgrade to like Snow Leopard, and half of my applications have like the circle with a line through it over the icon because they don't run on this version of the OS anymore. It's not because of any sort of bit transition. It's just like, nope, not compatible with this version of the OS at all. That happens all the time, but I feel like this is going to be the big one, right? And to be clear, I accept this as a you have to do this every once in a while. You can't keep all the old software running forever. It's counterproductive. You just end up being Windows. So I think it's good to clean this stuff out. It's an opportunity to find new, interesting, better alternatives. Like I'm happy finding that Ina or whatever application, because I'm glad someone's developing, someone who has some of the similar values to me in terms of configurability and UI and feature set is making a video player for the Mac. And it's not even Marzipan. Like what's even going on? When's the last time we saw a new Mac app?
Real-time follow-up from a friend of the show, Steve Trouton Smith. He posted to Twitter a couple of weeks ago, which I did not notice or didn't remember. There's a way to actually force your Mac to run only in 64-bit mode, which I haven't looked into the instructions yet, but we'll put a link in the show notes. So you could boot into this 64-bit only mode and see how many things fall apart to kind of get a taste for how screwed you are.
Yeah, it's not entirely representative because there's parts of the OS that are 32-bit that will presumably be ported, so you don't have to worry about them, but it'll be broken. But yeah, you can definitely find out which your apps aren't going to work. But like part of it is which apps aren't going to work, and part of it is just to find out which one of these developers is going to release a 64-bit version, because I bet a lot of them are. Like there are some, it's still a developed application, and they just never saw the need to be 64-bit. And they're going to release a 64-bit version, but they're not going to release it until they have to, essentially, until this OS is out for real. So even if you find them, it doesn't mean for sure you're not going to be able to run it. Just maybe go to their website, see the last time it was updated, send their support person an email, and see if you get a response and say, so are you going to make a 64-bit version of this? And if you don't get a reply, that probably means no.
Oh, man. We'll see what happens. So hopefully it won't be too bad, but I bet you there's going to be a lot of whining about random things that just stop working that nobody expected to stop working.
And speaking of the end of this thing is about they're finally upgrading to a more modern version of Python and Ruby. Command line stuff or other sort of, obviously the stuff with the ship of the operating system, that's fine. But if you're like me and compile a bunch of software out of the box, I think most of my compile stuff is 64-bit, but there's another situation where if there is anything built with 32-bit, it probably means that no one has bothered messing with it for such a long time that it just happens to build using, Apple's GCC lookalike emulation in 32-bit mode. And when 64-bit comes, I guess you could still compile a 32-bit executable, I suppose, with the GCC's cross-compile thing, but you can't run it. And to answer the chat room's question, no, I'm not going to use Homebrew. I don't know. I think it'll work out. I wish, yeah. This is one of the few times that I don't wish I was still writing the reviews, but I wish I had already written the review because I would know the answer to a lot more of these questions.
Nice.
Because when you're forced to write the review, you're forced to learn the answer to all these questions. And now instead I'm just asking the questions to the air and I got to read someone else's really big review.
We are sponsored this week by Linode, my favorite web host. You can get a server running in seconds with your choices of resources, distro, node location, and more. And they now have a new location. They are proud to announce their newest data center in Toronto, Canada. This is built using Linode's most up-to-date hardware and their next-generation network backbone. So Linode Toronto allows you to comply with in-country data protection requirements while taking advantage of all of Linode's technology and tools. Whatever you want to build, you can build it on Linode. You have dedicated CPU options available now. You have distributed application potential, hosted services, websites, CI and CD environments, which I bet Casey knows what that means. Or you can just run a big web app like I do. I run all of Overcast there. It's wonderful. If you're a nerd and you need to run servers, you need Linode. All of their servers have native SSD storage. They're backed by a 40 gigabit network, industry-leading processors. I've personally been hosting there for 8 years. This is longer than ATP has been running, long before they were a sponsor of this show, of course. I've been there for 8 years because it is simply the best host I have ever used. It's a wonderful value. It is proven even over that entire 8-year time. There has never been a time when I've said, I'm tempted to buy some other host because they're becoming a better value. No, it has never happened. In 8 years, Linode has always been either matching or exceeding the best values in the business from anybody else. It's been wonderful. Their support is great too. Their control panel is great too. Everything you want out of a web host, Linode offers it and more. Linode.com/ATP to see for yourself how awesome this web host is, and use promo code ATP2019 to get a $20 credit. And their plans start at just $5 a month. And so you can get 4 months free with that credit if you want to. Check it out, linode.com/ATP, my favorite web host. Thank you so much to Linode for sponsoring our show.
All right, let's move to Ask ATP, and we start with Alex White, who writes, I hear Syracuse say that he writes lots of code comments. Many coders today consider comments to be a quote-unquote code smell. That is to say, it's not good. Why does John think that they are valuable? And Alex wanted to chime in that they also think that they are valuable, for the record.
I suppose Marco probably doesn't have too much experience with other programmers, so I'll ask, have you ever met someone who considers comments to be a code smell?
Never.
No, I don't think so. Not that I can recall. I would presume at some point or another, I don't think I've heard anyone explicitly state that they think it's a smell, but certainly by virtue of the lack of comments in their code, you can kind of deduce that they think it's a bit of a smell. But no, I don't think I've ever seen anyone like thumping their chest saying this is gross, get it out of here.
I mean, I can guess the logic behind it. If you figure I think there's two arguments against comments that I can think of. One would be the code should be self-documenting, and the second would be that comments don't update themselves when the code changes. And so if you refactor or rewrite or change something, there's a chance the comments could be out of date. But besides those two things, which aren't massive problems, I mean, I don't write a ton of comments, so it's not, maybe I'm the wrong person to talk about this, but I don't think comments indicate technical debt or bad code smell or anything in and of themselves. I think they can reflect other problems maybe, but the presence or absence of comments doesn't itself indicate much of anything.
Yeah, the self-documenting thing is what I was thinking of is probably the strongest reason. They're not updating stuff is that doesn't make any sense. You control both of them, so yeah, they could get out of sync, but you could also have random lines of garbage code and dead code. Is code a code smell? Anyway, for the self-documenting, this gets into. I was forced to try to explain this to my son because he's doing programming. I was trying to tell him how to write good comments. This is all just basic advice that you hear from when you're learning programming, but it's worth talking about for a non-programmer audience that may be listening to this and just about to fast forward. Hi, Jason, because we're talking about programming. The self-documenting thing is the code should be obvious in itself. You shouldn't need a comment to explain it, because if you have some code that's super clever and you need to write a thing about, I know this you can't figure out what this is doing by looking at it, but let me explain, then that's a sign that you're being too clever for your own good. And there is definitely a too clever angle. But on the flip side of that, in terms of documenting the code, self-documenting code, as in I can tell what that line is doing, is not really what the purpose comments are supposed to serve. So the canonical example of a bad comment that we've all seen is, and I can't even use this in Swift anymore. He was doing Swift, so I had to self-edit myself instead of saying I++. You can't do it. Anyway, I plus equals 1 or I++ or whatever. You're taking a variable and you're incrementing it by 1. So that would be the code.
Why
limit.
They took out plus in Swift?
Don't even get me started on this, Marco. Don't even get me started. This makes me so angry.
Why?
They didn't take it out. I don't think it was ever there.
No, it was there.
Oh, it was briefly. I don't know. It was Swift 2. It went away.
Yeah,
3?
It was early. I can't. I can't handle this
He
conversation.
can't. He literally can't even.
Swift is such a dick. It's just why? Why does it have to be such a dick all the time?
Because of post and increment and pre-increment. Anyway, that's not the really just what we're talking about here. The canonical example, I'm going to use I++ to pretend we're Objective-C or C++. And the canonical example of a bad comment is add 1 to I. Like, that's the comment.
right.
So that's, for non-programmers, plus means just take the variable and add 1 to it. It's a short way of writing that, right? And if your comment says add 1 to I, that is a useless garbage comment, because anybody who is a programmer knows what I++ does, and you writing add 1 to I does not add any information whatsoever. Like, it's just noise. It's forcing someone to read it before they get angry by the time they finish reading. Like, oh, great, that doesn't help, right? So self-documenting code, I++, arguably, if you're an experienced programmer, is self-documenting. You look at it, that's the whole line. There's no other, it's not in the middle of a big complicated expression. It's just on a line by itself, or I plus equals 1, or I equals I plus 1. It's self-documenting. But what you write comments about is not what a line of code is doing. But I mean, there's lots of things you write comments about, but I'm starting at the micro level here. It's why it's doing it. So to give an example, I ran across this on the same day I was trying to explain comments to my son. It was some actual code at work that I was looking at that someone else wrote, and it was like, if interval greater than 1 and value greater than equal threshold, do whatever. It's a conditional and an if. You look at that and you're like, I know what all those operators mean. I know what a greater than means. I know what greater than or equals means. The variables were named reasonably. Interval is like some interval the thing is taking place, and threshold is like some value when it's whatever, right? You don't need to comment that. It would be, the stupid comment would be if interval is greater than 1, or if like you write the English version of it, or if value is greater than equal to threshold or whatever. Anyway. But the question was, the question that a comment would need to explain here, and I think this is the annotation I added to the code review, was you should put a comment on this thing, not explaining what the code does, but explaining why it's doing this. And in this case, it was like, the question is, why is it greater than or equal to instead of greater than? And why are you checking if the interval is greater than 1? Like, why do you care if the interval is greater than 1 before you check the threshold, right? And now I more or less knew why. But that's the type of thing you put in a comment. It's like, well, if we do this for fractional intervals less than 1, and because the conditional is greater than or equal to, and the thresholds are integers, but the interval is a float, you may end up redoing this check multiple times per second, because you'll check again every 10th of a second, but you won't pass the threshold until you get to a certain point. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I'm explaining it poorly, but like it's more obvious if you're a programmer and have done stuff like this before. But the point is, that's what you write the comment about and explain. This isn't a mistake. I didn't accidentally put greater than or equal to. This comparison to the interval is not redundant code that is pointless, because interval is always going to be greater than 1. What you have to do is explain the reason this is a double conditional is because in the situation, because one's an integer and one's a float. In the situation where this one is less than 1, you don't want to check this multiple times because it would be inefficient. That's what you write in the comment. And that's like the lowest level comment I'm talking about, moving all the way up to a comment about what the hell this function is supposed to do, broadly speaking. What arguments does it take? What return value does it have? What exceptions could it throw? And there's structured ways to do that depending on your language. Classes. What the hell's the point of this class? What is it supposed to do? What are its responsibilities, broadly speaking, right? In a large function, break it up into pieces. This is the part where we do the setup. This is the part where we do the work. This is the part where we do the cleanup. Like, that's what comments are for. They're not for, tell me what this line of code does, right? It's about the why and about the overall design. The best comments you see, like there's a lot of examples in Apple's code where they'll do little ASCII art diagrams of in-memory structures for nitty-gritty code that's doing like lots of bit slinging and stuff. Those are invaluable. Like, the code is obvious. Look, I'm just taking this pointer and I'm iterating and like, but show me the little rectangle, show me the region, show me how things are done. Right? You can do a surprisingly rich set of documentation just with little ASCII symbols. So comments, I think, are super important. Doing good comments, writing good comments is a skill, and it's difficult. And, the first step in that journey is knowing not to write add 1 to I. But there are many, many steps after that. And I highly endorse getting good at writing comments.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to say, which you eventually meandered toward, which was it's less about what and more about why. And I don't think I really ever, I don't think I had intuited that until somewhat recently. And sometimes I would describe what's happening when it was either a little bit clever or a little bit convoluted, which sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two. And it wasn't as often that I would be sure that I was describing the why. But that whenever I read that or heard that the first time, may have been from you for all I know, that really rocked my world in the best possible way. And that is what I would recommend is certainly there are times where describing what is important, but you should start from the perspective of, if I'm going to write a comment here, I should describe why I wrote the code that follows or above it or whatever.
The dark version of that is if you work for a jobby job for a big corporation, chances are good that a lot of the comments you write will explain like, this is like this because the previous version of this product did this. And when this person was here, he decided it wanted to be like this. So we did it like that. And if we ever change this thing, we can get rid of this. But for now, you have to leave it. Actually, don't delete this, even though it looks super dumb. We have to keep doing it this way. Here's a URL to something in our bug tracker. And if you check this part of the code in this file, and if it ever changes, you can go back and clean this up, like historical documents.
Yep.
Because again, you're never going to figure that out by looking at the code. You're like, if you just look at the code, you're like, this makes no sense. You're like, actually, I know it seems nonsensical and it is bad, but let me explain to you why it's bad and let me stop you from deleting it because if you delete it, stuff will break and you might not realize that. You don't feel good writing that comment, but that's an important job of comments in a real code base where you don't have the luxury of just making everything beautiful all the time.
Yep. It is not often, but there were definitely occasions where I was asked or compelled or what have you to do something that seemed weird or I disagreed with or something like that, or just seemed counterintuitive at first glance, even if I did agree with it. And I would definitely write, the following was decided because of such and such conversation between me and such person on such and such date, with my name attached to it. So exactly what you said, future me or future coworker or what have you, when they stumble on this and go, what? Then they can see the comment and say, oh. And sometimes to your point, John, it'll be a link to like, God help me, it was Jira at my most recent job, but a link to an issue tracker that says, okay, let me explain, the history here and what was going through all of our minds at the time.
Yeah, be careful with links though, because if your company changes the issue tracker every 3 or 4 years, then all those links break. And like I said, the main thing I tend to end up commenting here is like, future person, which may be me, at what point is it safe to undo or get rid of this hack? What conditions must be met? Like, this is gross. This shouldn't be done this way. We have to for some stupid reason that I will not document. To tell when it's safe to fix this, check this, this, and this. And I found that very valuable as someone who's been at the same job for many years, for my past self to leave things like that and go, oh, I can delete this now because past me says it's okay. And you still have to figure out how to test it. But it's much more reassuring than like, can we change that? Like it explains this big long-winded reason, but does that still apply? Is that still true of that other module? Yeah.
Yep. I was thinking recently, this is a tangent, but I was thinking recently back to when I worked at Northrop Grumman, and I was working on a code base that was very old, very, very old. It was a C++ code base. I don't know C++ very well anymore, and I don't recall exactly what the timeline was for all these things, but I feel like it predated like the C++ standard template library. So like strings were not something that existed in C++ when this app had started life. Well, anyway, I bring all this up to say it's a very old app. And I remember at the top of each and every file in the entire app, and this was a big app, like a couple 100,000 lines or something like that. At the top of every file, there was the entire change history, like all of the basically commit messages that you would add by hand and go through code review.
There was some other way to track that information.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know, and now I scoff at it, but at the time it was actually pretty helpful because I forget what we were on the Rational Suite, I think, which was a complete piece of garbage at the time. This was in 06, 07, somewhere in that neck of the woods.
It's great when your version control system requires the installation of a kernel extension, which Rational Clearcase did at various points.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, but I just a few days ago, I was reflecting on that and about how we would have like 100 or 200 lines for some of these files, like the string that was homebrewed, for this project. That string file had like 100 or 200 lines of just version history and a huge ass comment all the way at the top. And And in a lot of ways, I think it was ridiculous, but I also found it somewhat useful. And it was also kind of funny to go, spelunking through this version history and see like upper management back when they were just grunts, who had made commits to like the string library. And you think, oh, Sue Smith, when did she ever actually write code? John, whatever, he wrote code. I just knew him as, super director and, Sue's underling or whatever the case may be. And it was always funny to see some of those people that had been there forever, went back when they were, in my position, just slinging code.
That's me now because people come to me and say, I'm editing a bunch of code and I did the whatever blame thing on it and all the lines are from you. I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
I said 8 years ago. I'm like, speaking of version control, is another thing I'm annoyed that my son's programming class doesn't teach him because, I mentioned that he should use version control and he just rolled his eyes at me. But sure enough, I go over and look at his little Google Drive where he has to upload all of his source code. And what do you see in the folder with all his .swift files? tank_v1, tank_v2, tank_v, version control by file naming.
Oh God.
Like, because they don't teach them to use version control. And even if they did, they can't use it in Google Drive the way they're forced to submit things. So, and locally on the local Mac is .swift file. He's doing the same thing. It's like, I'm not going to go through I have to learn Git or something. And honestly, I don't even know how Git integrates with Xcode, so I'd probably just hose something. So I'm like, all right, just keep doing that, but know that this is not what normal people do. Like, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up too, because when I graduated from Virginia Tech with a computer engineering degree, I had never used source control. Like, I feel like, and this was in 2004 when I graduated. I feel like the program I went through was really good. I really honestly believe that, but it was very, very, very academic and not terribly pragmatic, and that I somewhat regret. And I had to learn a lot of that stuff in my first job. Like, oh, this would have been so nice to have known about source control 3 years ago when I was working on school stuff. Although at that point I was such a slacker, I probably would have avoided it anyway. But nevertheless, it was all that stuff like practical software development that I just didn't really get in school. So I don't find it particularly in high school. It's high school that he's in, right? Not middle school?
High school, yep.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not entirely surprised that a high school program doesn't teach you about source control. But yeah, now thinking of going back to that time, just like it's incredible to me that I was able to graduate from a 4-year program and get an engineering degree in something that was related to software and still had never used version control at the time. I presume at this point that is very much a part of the curriculum, but back in the early aughts, it was not. Marco, did you ever do anything with it?
No.
So you never had source control anything in school?
No, not at all. Like we barely learned anything, any kind of practical tooling kind of things like that. Like it was my computer science education was much more focused on the theoretical, the types of languages, stuff like how to design a compiler, that kind of stuff. It was nothing about version control or bug trackers or anything that you get in modern software development practice. And at the time, it really annoyed me. But their argument, the school's argument was, those things are going to go, they're going to go in and out of fashion in a few years. Whereas we don't want your education to be out of date in 5 years when the tools change. And that's fair. But the reality is that just means that you have to pick up all that stuff on the job.
Yeah, the colleges generally consider themselves not to be vocational schools, and they're trying to teach you theory and math and stuff that doesn't change, and it makes some sense. Yeah. But for something like version control, in a 4-year program, there's room for one section of one course that teaches you something practical. It doesn't suddenly turn into Apex Tech for programmers. It doesn't suddenly turn into just a boot camp. You're still learning all the CS theory and all, the algorithms and all the crazy math and whatever you're learning, the timeless stuff that doesn't change or that only, that isn't dated to certain technology or products, but just in one class, maybe in your first class, maybe as a freshman class just to get you up and running before you know anything anyway. Just teach them the basics of version control. I learned version control not from any of my classes, I'm pretty sure, but because I'm so old, I learned it from the very first web pages showing you how to build web pages and websites. It showed you how you could use CVS to help you build websites. Nice. That did not age well. That knowledge and skill and practice did not age well at all. And I think even in some of my early jobs, I was using Subversion.
My first job, I used CVS.
Yeah. An RCS was what I read about it in my really old Beardy Man Unix books, but I never actually used it because I can tell just from reading about it that it was terrible. CVS is so much better.
Until you want to delete a directory.
Yeah, just got to fix stuff in the attic. Everything will be fine.
All right, let's move on. The next Ask ATP question is from Dan Provost, friend of the show. And Dan writes, I'd love to hear your methodology. This is mostly for John. I'd love to hear your methodology for rating movies on Letterboxd or Letterboxd. I give way too many movies, either 3.5 or 4 stars. My system is broken.
Oh, I mean, my system I use is similar for what I use to music, which is like, it's a little bit different. So for movies, like we've talked about this I've talked about this on a lot of my podcasts of best versus favorite. Is this your favorite song or is this the best song in your collection? And for songs, I tend to lean more on the favorite side, like the songs that I like a lot. They may not be the world's best song, but they may get very high ratings because I like them. We talked about this last time with like songs with catchy music that I like, but with stupid lyrics, right? Movies, for whatever reason, I lean slightly more in the direction of best. So I will only give 5, they do star ratings up to 5. I only give a 5-star rating to a movie that I think is just excellent. It's not perfect. 5 doesn't mean perfect, but it means there are very few movies that are better than this. Like this is the cream of the crop. This is a great, great movie. Like it does everything well, everything that it set out to do, it does well. Even if it's the type of movie I don't like, I might give something 5 stars because I think it was like an amazingly executed movie in a genre that I'm not that interested in. So it's not my favorite movie, but I would give it 5 stars. That's rare, but I'm saying I just lean slightly more in that direction. So the 5s are reserved for movies that I think are just unassailable. Like you can find things to poke at them that are wrong, but in general, they do everything they're supposed to do. They have some exceptional elements and they have nothing super bad about them. Once you reserve the 5s for those, you realize there aren't that many 5s out there in the world. Like the best picture winner at the Oscars every year, chances of that being a 5 are pretty low lately, right? So the 5s are just, every once in a while, a movie will come along that you think is a 5. So cut them out. You don't have to worry about them. It's going to be like a handful of movies. Now you're working with 1 through 4. 4 are movies that are really, really good, but there's at least one thing that you're like, that could have been a little bit better. That's what the 4s are. 3.5 is this was a good movie, but there is something obvious wrong to it that I don't have to think too hard about. That they blew it in one particular aspect, and it's not like it's like, oh, that part wasn't good, but or that aspect of it could have been a little bit better, but overall it was a pretty good movie. 3 is my threshold for liked it, didn't like it. If it's a 3-star, it's like the minimum that I'm going to give a movie that I mostly liked, but it's got a lot of issues, right? But I still I still had fun. It was fine, but it's not really a particularly good movie. And then anything below that, I don't think I have any 2.5s, but 2s, 1s, like I don't even use halves down those ranges. Those are movies that you actively disliked, and not only do you actively dislike them, but they're not good movies. They didn't have any redeeming value. They weren't put together well. Everything, various aspects of them were bad. That's just a question of where the garbage is in it. So I think I spend a lot of time hanging out in the, maybe I do to 2.5s, 2.5, 3, 3.5 range. To break into a 4, you have to be pretty good. 4.5 is like it's a 5, except there's like one little niggle that is just bothering me, and I can't give it a 5, right? So I think if you did a distribution of my movies, I'm hoping it would show that most of the stuff is hanging out around the 3s, 2.5, 3, 3.5 range. Anyway, that's my system, and I'm trying to use the whole range. I suppose I don't use 1 and 2 enough. Like, what distinguishes a 1 and 2? Probably my hatred for it, because like 2 is basically like thumbs down. 1 is like thumbs down, and also I actively dislike you, and half is when I can't give it 0.
Oh, man. Let's just never have you rate your co-hosts. All right. M. Roselius writes, hey, Marco teases that he has a new backpack a couple of months ago, but he didn't provide any details. Can you share the bag and contents you're bringing with you to WWDC? This is actually relevant for the pre-show that may or may not have even made it into the final recording.
It will.
But what would you say you're going to treat as your WWDC specific everyday carry, Marco?
So it isn't every day, is it?
He's going to have a generator and a really big knife.
Yeah. I went on this kind of backpack odyssey over the last couple of years, and I mentioned on this show before that I was a big fan of the Peak Design Everyday Backpack, but that I had kind of a love-hate relationship with it. That I liked a lot about it. I used it for a long time, but I had the smaller of the two, the 20 liter, 20 or 25, whatever it is, the smaller of the two Peak Design backpacks. I loved so much about it, but it just never held enough stuff. It was just way too cramped. And the big one I saw actually last year at WWDC, two different people came up to me, because I had mentioned it recently before that. Two different people came up to me and showed me they had the larger one so I could see it in person. And I looked at it, and I took one look at it, and I'm like, oh, that's way too big for me. I can't pull off the larger one. So I was kind of stuck. Now, as I was complaining about the smaller one, one of the very first responses I got for it was somebody who said, I had the smaller one too. I had all the same complaints as you. I got the bigger one, and it's so much better, and it solved all my problems. So just get the bigger one. Just try it. But again, I had seen them in person, and I thought, it's way too big on me. It would look ridiculous. It looks comical. It's just giant. Forget it. And so I tried a bunch of other ones. I tried the Tom Bin, Synapse 25, which I believe I'd mentioned here on the show that just it didn't fit at all. The shape it formed against my back when there was stuff in it was really, really badly resting on me. It was clearly meant for people who are taller than me. And so all the love for the Synapse 25, I understand from certain perspectives, but it just didn't fit me. And the Synapse 19 I didn't want to try because from what I understand, it doesn't really fit a 15-inch laptop very well. And while I don't currently have a 15-inch, I want the ability to have one in the future, because I do waffle between 13 and 15-inch laptops, every couple of years. So I thought, well, I'll try a few others. I tried the Nomadic Travel Pack, and by the way, this is a good time to shout out again to our friend Chase Reeves. Chase Reeves does a wonderful YouTube channel and a website at bagworks.co, where he reviews high-end and mid-range to high-end backpacks and travel bags and other travel gear like that. And he's super backpack nerd, and so I love watching his videos for lots of reasons. I mean, he's also just a really fun person, but for bag reviews, you can't go wrong with Chase Reeves and bagworks.co. Anyway, so I was going through all his recommendations, watching all his videos, thinking I gotta find my ideal backpack, gotta find it, and I tried a few, and eventually I just, after going through a whole bunch of other bags and not liking them as much as I love-hated my Peak Design Everyday 20 liter, I decided, you know what? Let me just freaking try the big one. It's really big, but it's fine. And I'm happy with it, finally. The bigness does actually solve many of its problems. Like one of my big problems with the small everyday bag is that the side pockets were so small as to be fairly useless. I was almost why do they even put these side pockets in here? And the big one, the side pockets are just bigger enough that it's better. It works. The laptop compartment is still really tight if you want to carry an iPad and a laptop, but it's doable. And it's way more comfortable when getting a laptop in and out than the smaller one. The actual main cargo space is bigger, and I'm able to fit more stuff. Not massively more, but more. And it's enough. I actually still have both sizes. And for I took a day trip recently, and I decided, let me load up the small one and bring that to see if I miss it. And immediately I was I can't fit anything in this thing. and so I fully converted it now to the big one. So I'm happy with that as my bag. Now, it is a big bag, and I frequently need or want a smaller bag for less needs. When I'm not packing up for a big trip or bringing a bunch of gear with me, I'd like to have a smaller bag available. So I've gone through a similar backpack odyssey with that. One could argue I should just use the smaller one of the everyday bags as my small bag, and that's a reasonable argument, which I might end up doing. I'm currently I'm using the Archetype Dash Pack, it's totally fine. Like it's not like a stellar bag, but it's nice. I don't know if I'm going to stick with the archetype long term. If this is like my I'm done small backpack, probably not, because there are aspects of its design that I don't use. Like it has this weird sideways laptop compartment that goes right against your back that you access from like the back side of it. And I just don't use that compartment at all because it's stupid. Like I just put the laptop in the main compartment where there is a pocket for it also. Like I don't know why there's this weird thing on the back. But anyway, so like this bag is not perfect, but it's fine. But my small bag needs are still unresolved. My big bag need though is pretty well solved by the Peak Everyday 30. As for what's in these bags, I decided a long time ago that I wanted my travel bag, whatever my travel backpack was, in this case the Peak design, I wanted to always keep in it the things I would need, like electronics-wise, when I was traveling, which means buying extra things. In case you discovered this religion recently too, like it's so much nicer if you can buy an extra charger and buy an extra cable and buy extra copies of any tech that you need when you're traveling and just keep them in your backpack all the time. Never take them out unless you are using them during traveling. That is the only time you take them out. Otherwise, they stay there. And that way, you do have kind of this go bag of, at least for tech stuff, where like you can just like put your laptop in this bag if it isn't already in the bag and just take it with you. And you have everything you need. So laptop charger, phone charger, if those are different things, any cables you need. If you want to have like, a phone charger for the nightstand for the hotel room, like bring that, the long cable for that, which is nice. That's another tip. Like get like the 2-meter lightning cable for your phone for traveling. It's really nice in the hotel rooms. So that kind of stuff, like keep everything separate. And I also have this like old person pill box that I got from Amazon for like 2 for $7. And it's like this folding closed with like stick together with magnets pill organizer box that has just different little flip compartments that you can put different pills in. And I put in there a small amount of all sorts of over-the-counter drugs that I occasionally need while traveling. Antacids, ibuprofen, allergy pills, Dramamine, stuff that I frequently will need while traveling that is a pain to have to buy every time or is very expensive to buy like a tiny amount of in an airport or something, and it's really nice to have that like always with me. Like, oh, if I'm on the plane and I decide, crap, I need some Advil right now, like I have it. It's fine. It's always there. So I have that in there. I have a couple of packets of fancy instant hipster coffee, Swift Cup coffee. That's my current favorite one. High-end instant coffees that are surprisingly good. They're a little expensive. Usually they're about between like $1.50 and $2 each. So they're surprisingly expensive, but they're very good. So I have my own coffee, and that way, like when you are on a plane, say, or somewhere like in a horrible place to get coffee, you can just ask for a cup of hot water, and you can then take out your little packet when nobody's looking and dump it into your cup and try to hide the fact that you're being a total jerk by making your own instant hipster coffee instead of taking the plain coffee. But it's totally worth being that jerk because it is so much better. What else do I keep in that bag? Dongles, any kind of dongle I might need. I have recently entered the sub-bag lifestyle for certain things. I certainly love packing cubes when traveling, like when packing like a big bag, like with clothes and everything. In the backpack, I don't use them quite as much, but I do like having a couple of small pouches for like tech miscellany, like stuff I don't usually need, but I might. So that's things like a micro SD to full size SD card adapter, the little USB-C and Lightning dongles to headphones. Stuff like that, like the little tech crap that you occasionally need, a spare SD card, stuff like that. I have little tiny Tom Bin like zipper pouches for those.
Yep, that
I shove it pretty much everywhere, and that's most of the stuff that stays there all the time. Oh, like a little tiny notebook and pen. I think the notebook's from Muji, like some like small thing optimized for low weight and low size because I don't usually need to handwrite anything, but occasionally I do. I always carry earplugs with me when traveling because I will occasionally find myself in a very loud place and I don't want hearing damage. So always carry earplugs. If I'm going on a plane, I will bring my noise-canceling headphones, currently the Sony MDR whatever Mark II. I should mention my travel setup for powering and charging my devices is all USB-C. I have moved everything over to USB-C. Not all the peripherals that I have are USB-C yet, but all of the power sources, and then therefore all of the charging cables I have are USB-C. I only keep one USB-A cable with me. It's one of those like multi-enders where it's like you have USB-A on one end and then like micro C and lightning things you could stick, like little duck heads that you could stick onto the other end. But everything else I have is USB-C. So all of my lightning cables, with the exception of that one, every other lightning cable is an Apple USB-C to lightning cable. My charging cables are all Apple USB-C to C charging cables because they're super thin, the Apple ones. And then my laptop charges with C. My headphones charge with a C to micro adapter. And it's wonderful. All the power bricks are C bricks. This is an area that has taken great strides recently. I guess I'll put in the show notes. I have a couple of USB-C power bricks that are really nice. There's the new gallium nitride, whatever the new like GaN standard or silicon alternative is for making power transformers, has allowed much smaller power bricks than before. So now like you can get a little 30-watt power brick or a 45-watt power brick that's significantly smaller than they were before. So I now use those on my laptop. So I don't even carry the Apple 60-watt brick anymore. I use this like RAV Power 45-watt thing that is smaller than a deck of cards, and it weighs almost nothing, and it's 45 watts, which is enough for my travel needs. And so I use that to power my laptop. And I have a couple of smaller ones, like little 18-watt things, little 30-watt things for powering my phone. And those are powerful enough to fast charge a phone or an iPad, but they're not that much bigger than like a phone or iPad power brick would be. So I have a few USB-C power bricks, a few USB-C to C or Lightning cables, and my one multi-cable, and that's it. It's wonderful.
You might want to reconsider the medicine thing, because like the idea of having stuff always in the bag waiting for you is fine for things that don't deteriorate over with age, but I think some medicines do either lose their potency with age or other bad things happen to them, even if they're sealed in bottles. I don't know exactly what you're keeping in there, but it's worth looking for all the things you keep in there. If this has been in there for 5 years, is it any good anymore? Should I still be swallowing it?
That's a good question. Oh, and the one big important thing I have come to in the last 6 months or so is that I keep two bags. Like I keep the big bag and the small bag. All of those exact same things are in both bags. I have duplicates of everything. So I can take either bag with me, and I know it's going to have a set of USB-C to whatever cables, the multi-cable. I have two identical pill boxes, like of all those pills. Like they both have instant coffee in them. Everything is duplicated except for like the laptop. Like I only have one laptop. But
do you though?
All of the accessories, actually, all of the accessories, all those like cables, chargers, pills, notebook, pen, paper, like all that stuff is all duplicated between the two bags. So at any time, I can just grab either one of the bags and know that I have all those basics covered. And that has been really nice too. That has been almost as nice as having like all the stuff stay in your travel bag in the first place. I think if you are leading a multi-bag lifestyle, that's the way to do it. Like pick two bags, make your big one and your small one, and load them both up with all the basics so that they're always available to you.
So you either have a lot of willpower, or it's a testament to your amazing conspicuous consumption that you don't find yourself digging into one of those bags when you just can't find that one adapter that you need. And you're like, oh, I know where one is.
Oh, no.
There's one in my bag, which is a no. You're not supposed to do. But the only reason you wouldn't do it is if you never find yourself in that situation, because you bought 150 of them to be all over your house. Like the luxury of buying duplicates and triplicates of all your things and having the bags is nice, but that can get expensive. And unless you travel a lot, maybe not entirely worth it. And the second thing is, as your kids get older, they will probably have fewer compunctions about, oh, I know where there's, I mean, to give an example and not to turn this into directives, I know where there's a nail clipper in Dad's backpack because he always keeps one there. So guess who's always digging into my backpack because they can't find any of the other nail clippers because they left them who knows where. And then I go for my nail clipper and it's not there. And why is it not there? A kid took it. So just wait until your kids want your adapters. Just wait.
I mean, the good thing is when you go to an all USB-C travel lifestyle, you actually don't need very many different things. Like there actually aren't that many, like by quantity, there aren't that many different things. Like and it actually isn't that expensive to outfit a backpack with these basics. Like because you're really talking about like 2 or 3 little power bricks, maybe 3 or 4 cables at most. Like it's not, you're not talking a whole lot of stuff.
Something that I've discovered recently is I have my Go Pack, which we'll put a link in the show notes to that. And that's fairly large. And some of that, actually, I guess all of it is self-created, but some of that is self-created because I like to be a little over-prepared. And I have a few things in there that I probably won't need, but you never really know.
Do you have an entire generator in your backpack?
No, I wish I did. Man, that would be convenient.
A little heavy,
but convenient.
Yeah.
But what I've done is I have a Tom Bin organizer pouch, which is one of those zipper clear pouches, probably the same thing you were talking about earlier, Marco. And I have that clipped to the inside of my Tom Bin Copilot, which is the bag I use more often than not these days because I don't have a 15-inch MacBook Pro anymore. Well, anyways, in this little organizer pouch, which is actually quite small, I keep one Lightning to USB-C cable, one of those multi-ender cables that you were talking about. I think Gruber had recommended it like a couple of months back, and basically every nerd bought one, including me.
Yep.
So it's the the USB-A to C mini and micro, I think, or something like that. It's what you described before.
C mini and lightning.
Or
C micro and lightning.
Yeah, I think that's right. I keep the Luna display in there. I keep, as you had said, the USB-C to headphone adapter and a lightning to headphone adapter. I keep a mini SD and full-size SD card reader. It's the same thing. It's the same unit. It can do both. I keep a little tiny dongle that's a USB-A to C converter because you never really know. And then a little tiny, I don't know who makes this, but it's a PowerPort Mini, which is a 2-port. Oh, Anker.
Sounds like Anker.
So right on the side. Yeah. It's an Anker 2-port USB-A charger. So think of something that's about the size of an iPhone brick, but actually has 2 ports. And so this is convenient if you're in like an airport and me and Aaron want to both charge our phones. We could, actually would probably be doing that off of my Away suitcase. I don't even know if they're sponsoring this week, but
nope.
But that really is the truth. That's probably how we would be doing it. But if not, we use this little Anker PowerPort Mini, and all of that lives. Now, admittedly, it gets crammed into, but all of that lives in this little pouch, and that pouch can go back and forth between the 2 bags. Now, in a perfect world, yes, I agree with you. I would have an identical pouch for the other bag that I used to use from time to time when I had a big laptop, and now I almost never use it, which was a Tom Bin Cadet. But anyways, this little pouch, this is my little mini Go Pack, and the sanctity of this is paramount. This is what John was alluding to earlier. Nothing leaves this unless it goes back in the moment I have finished using it, and I am religious about that. So in a perfect world, I would never go into this unless I'm traveling, but in the case that I do occasionally go into this, even when it's at home, I am very strict, and I will be until Declan is of age and Michaela later. I'm very strict about nothing leaving that unless it is absolutely necessary, and then it gets dropped right back in as soon as it's done.
By the way, this whole bag thing, like my whole like cables and power and everything, this is why I want the iPhone to go USB-C.
Oh, agreed.
Because right now, the only I have C to C and C to Lightning cables, and I have to have these 2 different cables, and there currently is nobody who makes cables that are C to multi-ender Lightning or C. Like those don't exist as far as I know, and if they did, they would probably be severely limited with like how much power they could transfer or something like that. Like right now, like I can take a C to C cable and charge my laptop with Apple's little skinny C to C, or their little skinny, their charge cable, the 1 meter charge cable. It's a C to C cable. It's like as thick as an old Lightning cable, which is like not very thick at all, and it's very small, light, thin, flexible, and it can plug into a tiny like 30 watt or 45 watt. GAN power brick, and I have what used to be like this big bulky setup to charge a laptop is now this tiny little thin, light, small thing that's way cheaper too. Like, the combined cost of the cable and the power brick is like $50, way cheaper than buying a separate laptop charger used to be, and you can keep it in your bag. And if you don't need it at that moment, you can use the exact same thing to charge an iPad. And if you switch out the cable and put the Lightning version on, you can use the exact same thing to charge a phone. And if the phone also goes USB-C, that makes all of this even better. I will very quickly throw away most of my lightning cables if that happens, because I have lightning cables all over the place, like just in case I need, for a phone or whatever. And it's like, man, that cannot happen soon enough. Like the transition, hopefully, of a phone to USB-C will make this even better, even simpler, and will make me carry even fewer cables.
Yeah, I am definitely ready for the iPhone to go USB-C. I don't expect it to happen quite yet, but I am ready for that life.
All right, thanks to our sponsors this week, Squarespace, Linode, and Marine Layer. And we will see you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
Semi-real-time follow-up. Apparently, Letterboxd does have a view where you can see your average ratings per year. It gets a little wonky, like back in time for like old movies where I'll like rate one movie for the entire year and that becomes the average rating. But looking at the graph, you can see my average rating has been going down slightly during like the years where I watch lots of movies. My highest rated year with enough samples is 1980 with an average of 4.38. 2019's current rating is 2.90.
Ooh.
There's lots of twos around the past 5 years or so. Like 2016 is 3.12, it just clears 3. So yeah, I guess that makes me a tough grader, but I just feel like I'm using the whole range. I mean, these are years like the 2000s and stuff, and where I'm watching lots of movies, so I feel like the average is representative. But as I go back in time, either the only movies I even remember from like my childhood are the ones that were really good, so the average is high, or I only have like 3 movies rated in like 1961 or whatever, so the average is high because again, I'm rating movies that I've seen that are old just because they're probably classics or really good movies. But yeah, Letterboxd's got everything. I'll put that link in the show notes too.
What else is going on?
Do you want to talk about your app, or do you want to save it for when you ship it?
At the moment, I am angling and hurtling toward releasing. It's been extremely fun, extremely stressful, and extremely weird and good in this last push because I've been sending betas or alphas, I've been calling them, whatever. I've been sending builds to a bunch of friends, and I think my test flight has something like 30 people on it, most of whom are friends. A few of them are people that I at least casually know. But it's been a lot of fun getting a whole bunch of feedback from a whole bunch of people, most of which has been really tremendous and has made the app a hell of a lot better. Some of which I disagree with, some of which I begrudgingly agree with, and then, or I like Marco and I've been going back and forth on a few things, which, sometimes we'll be like, I don't know, I really don't like this, but then it has led one of us, typically Marco, to have an epiphany that has made things really a whole lot better. So it's been a lot of fun. When you have a regular jobby job, especially if it's I don't want to say the word relaxed, but maybe not a fast-paced jobby job, sometimes you can lose sight of, or it's nice. It's nice at a regular jobby job to have that moment when you have to give the big heave, and I haven't really had to do that in a while because even at my last jobby job, for the most part, the deadlines were self-created. So, oh well, we didn't hit that deadline. Whatever. It's been a few years since I've had like a really strong deadline. And as I've said in past shows, I really, really, really want to try to at least get this into app review before WWDC, preferably out before WWDC. But at the very least, I'd like to get it in app review on, extremely soon. And having that deadline and then working with all of my friends and whatnot, trying to get this squared away, it has been so stressful and so occasionally frustrating, but overall, it has been such incredible fun. And I'm really appreciative to a bunch of my friends who have spent an unfair amount of time, and by that I mean unfair to them amount of time helping me out with this stuff. Marco is a great example of this. My friend Jelly, who does what is it, Independence? Is that right? The really great podcast with Curtis Herbert and Alice Zhao. I hope I have all that right. That was right off the top of my head. Anyway, Marco and Jelly have been extremely helpful. Ben Rice McCarthy has been extremely helpful, and it's just been a lot of fun. And I'm stressed out of my mind, but at the same time, I'm really enjoying getting this kind of across the finish line. And I think the thing that's most exciting about it is it's gone from utter crap, both functionality-wise and looks-wise, to something that was at least somewhat, it was getting there, both in terms of functionality and looks. But now, I don't think this is going to win any design awards by any means. I'm not trying to oversell it, but I'm pretty proud of how this looks. And as someone who is an okay design critic but has no design eye, I'm pretty happy that, Ben and Jelly and Marco have really been able to steer me in the right direction to get this thing looking pretty good. And I know that there's things that Marco still disagrees with, and we don't necessarily need to talk about that now, although we can if it's relevant. But even with the things that I'm ignoring that Marco's suggesting, I still think this is way better, thanks to Marco and Jelly and Ben's influence, than it would have been if I just was left to my own devices. So I thank the three of you particularly, and everyone else has been helping out. It wasn't just the three of you, but I thank the three of you particularly. But it's been a lot of fun, and oh man, it is. Oh, I'm so stressed. I'm excited. Like, I'm really happy, but I'm so stressed.
I mean, that's part of the process. Like,
yeah.
I like one thing that I think is going to be telling here. And I don't want you to answer this yet because you don't actually know the answer yet. But I will be asking you at some point in the future, whether this is going to be like making videos or whether it's going to be something that you want to actually keep up with. Like, because, what I think you learned, what I certainly have learned, is that while I kind of learned how to make videos, I hated every minute of it, and I kind of decided, you know what, I probably actually don't enjoy this enough to really keep doing it. And you are going through a lot of stuff now with this app that you haven't either have never had to do or haven't had to do for a long time, or maybe only had to do it on a different scale before, or coming from a different place.
Sure.
And so you are going through all the crap that is necessary to make your own app. Like, all the stuff that you don't have to deal with when you have a full-time job with other people where you're only like one cog in the machine. And so you're dealing with a bunch of crap now that you may or may not actually want to do again in the future. And I do not want the answer now, but I will be asking you at some point soon, like, to try to evaluate that, to try to say, like, is this something that you actually enjoy doing? Because, like, if all this crap that you have to do to get a version 1.0 of an app out the door, you have to like get an icon made, get the name squared away, get the App Store submission crap, get the in-app purchase, all this stuff that you have to do to get any 1.0 app in the store when it's only you working on it. Is that going to be something that you actually want to do again in the future, or is it going to be such a grind and it's going to get you so down that you would rather work with other people still and not do stuff on your own?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. It's actually something I was thinking about earlier today. Marco and I were going back and forth a couple of times during the day where, he would suggest something and I would either say, wow, that's a great idea, give me a few minutes, or, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that at all. And then oftentimes I would do it. And then sometimes we would end up that I would be convinced that Marco was right, but sometimes I ignored him. But anyway,
and by the way, just a quick sidetrack, if you'll forgive me. I get design feedback from very talented people making very good points about my app all the time. I don't listen to all of it.
Right.
Like, like design suggestions are merely that. They're suggestions. Any designer who's giving you something who says it isn't a suggestion is lying to you. It's always a suggestion, and sometimes it's a really good suggestion, and sometimes they point out problems that maybe you disagree with the way they solved it, but are still legitimate problems that you need to solve. But regardless, people's design suggestions are just that. They are suggestions, and you don't have to follow them all.
Yeah.
Again, it is worth considering why they're making that suggestion and seeing if maybe you can solve it in a different way if you don't like their solution. But it's merely that. It's merely like how other people would do this. And you can take that with a grain of salt if you want to. And you can, for some of these things, you can say, you know what? I appreciate the feedback, but I want to do it my way on this because I think my way is better, or this is the way I want to do it. And you know, and sometimes you'll be wrong, but you know, that's part of the learning process that you're going through too. Is like you're going to have to figure out for yourself like when to take that feedback and when to know not to. Yeah,
I completely agree. And it's so an example of this, and I'll be specific because I think it's a really good like kind of case study about something that I really enjoyed that happened. I think it was earlier today. It's been such a blur. I've been working kind of nonstop, but
you sound like 6 builds today.
Yeah, it wasn't 6, but it was a bunch. I mean, I've been really trying to get this thing out the door, but the kind of landing screen and a general run of the app is, or the way it existed 24 hours or less ago, was that, you know, you have a navigation bar at the top, you have a button at the bottom, and a whole bunch of white space with nothing in the middle. And I didn't love it, but it was not something I was really looking at fixing at the time. And Marco very justifiably said sometime in the last 24 hours, in a nicer way, basically, you got to fix this thing, man, because this looks like crap. And you know, Marco had come up with several different ideas, which I ignored, and I did this knowing that it was going to drive you freaking mad, and it did. So, not in a screw you, Marco way, just in a, I know this is going to really piss him off, and that will cause both he and I to find a solution to this problem. So what I did was, I put a 50% opacity bit of text directly in the center of this humongous swath of white space.
Yeah, like you had this button on the bottom that's basically like start.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing above it before, so it was a giant white screen with a button like by the home indicator saying start.
Yeah, yep.
And so your solution was to my suggestion was get rid of the screen entirely, just start. And your solution was to put like a label, a text label, like in the middle of the white space saying like, click down there to start or something, and an arrow pointing down.
Yep. And I knew that I was never going to ship that for real, but I knew it would get both of us riled up enough that it will force us to find a solution. So I was basically, I was compensating Marco for helping me by pissing him off. So that's how friends work, right? But anyway, but I bring this up in part to laugh about it, but also in all seriousness, because then what ended up happening was, this morning, you and I were going back and forth about, you know, what can we do to fix this? And there's some other nuance that I'm going to kind of gloss over here that was important in the context of our conversation. But what we ended up deciding was, hey, what if we move the button to the middle? And also, when you tapped this go button, which is the button that would go and search for all these different services for images for all of your contacts, that can use a whole lot of data. And so the way it worked before today was when you tapped that button, it would look and see if you were on cell or if you were on Wi-Fi, and if you were on LTE, it would say, whoa. Are you sure? Because this could use a whole lot of data, and there would be a prompt, and then you could say basically, yeah, fine, whatever, or, oh, you're right, I'll do it later. And I never really liked that prompt to begin with, but it was important to me that the user was at least aware that, hey, this is potentially going to use a bunch of data. Are you sure? Well, not only did I not like the prompt, but not the podcast. I love the podcast. I'm talking about the prompt in my app, but anyway, not only did I not like the alert, but on top of that, the code that was holding all that together, I really didn't like. And it was one of those things where I'm not going to fix it right now, but I'm going to have to re-architect this at some point. So I already didn't like that whole block of code. I didn't like this white space. I didn't like the alert. And then what Marco and I ended up concluding was, hey, let's move the button to the middle and put a nice little piece of text below it that basically says, hey, we really, it's really recommended you do this over Wi-Fi. And that solved everything at once. It got rid of, or maybe not solved, but at least dramatically improved everything at once. So it got rid of that huge swath of white space, or broke it up, I guess, if nothing else. It got rid of that ugly alert that I really didn't like. It got rid of all the code for that ugly alert that I didn't really like. And in the heat of the moment, like, I was never annoyed at Marco, but I was annoyed at the situation because I felt like neither of us were coming up with good answers. And I was just getting frustrated by it. But then when it was mostly Marco, I think, but one way or another, when the two of us reached this conclusion, it was like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is so much better. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Marco, but for me, that whole exchange was one of the things I miss most about work, because even though I do quite like being my own independent person, it is just fun to me anyway, to be able to bounce stuff off of someone and work together to find a solution that you're really excited about, if not proud of. And something that I got thinking about after that whole happy kerfuffle was over was, I wonder how much you feel that way as well. And it's okay if you're like, well, I'm just helping out a friend and I really hated every moment of it. Like, whatever, I got what I needed out of it, so okay. But I can't help but wonder, because you strike me as a little bit more fiercely independent than I am. I wondered, was this fun for Marco, or does Marco miss this for Overcast? Or perhaps you are getting it from Overcast, just not from me, which is perfectly fine. But, it was a lot of fun for me to have that back and forth with you. And I don't know, and I was curious, like, do you enjoy that sort of thing, or would you rather just go into your cave? I don't mean that dismissively, but you know what I mean? Like, go into your cave and then come out with this like perfectly hewn piece of whatever, of app.
Well, I mean, you are on the Overcast beta. You know that that's not how it works usually.
Yeah.
As you're alluding to, one of the hardest things as an independent developer is getting good feedback and finding a way to have that feedback loop of, like iteration with somebody else or with other people's contributions and ideas. And it's funny, like, like as you mentioned, like one of the most frustrating feelings is when someone points out a problem with your design and they're right, but neither of you have come up with something better yet. Like, and that is part of the fun. Like, that's why you were like you were so mad, because it's like, because I get this same kind of feedback too, where like somebody will tell me something that's wrong in something I'm proposing, and I'd be like, because they're right, that is wrong, or this does suck in this way, and I just can't figure out anything better yet, but eventually I do. And so where I get this feedback from is a combination of friends, Tiff, and Twitter. The best suggestions come from like when I kind of like iterate a design on Twitter, which I do sometimes with Overcast, where like I'll like post a screenshot. I'm like, I'm kind of thinking about this. What do you think? And then I'll get a whole bunch of responses from people. And then I'll be like, all right, well, how about this? I'll kind of tweak it live, like on Twitter, like and get feedback that way. That's really cool when that happens. I don't do it that often, but when I have something where that makes sense to do, that feedback is always really valuable, really excellent.
I don't know how much I drove you nuts today, but I will speak for myself in saying I was having a hell of a lot of fun. Like even when I was frustrated with what was going on, it was still a hell of a lot of fun just working with somebody, especially someone who I quite like, and working with someone and trying to figure out a solution to a problem. Like that's, to me, that's what I think that's what engineering is all about, is just looking at the trade-offs and trying to find the best solution you can, given time constraints, given everything that you have in front of you. And that to me is the core of engineering. And I know Dr. Drang, if he is listening to this, is like just dying right now. But that's what I find most fun about this discipline, which I claim to be engineering. And so I was really enjoying it, and I appreciate all the help and appreciate you taking the time to go back and forth with me. And I think the app, not just because of this white space issue, it was just a very easy case study that I could describe verbally, but I think the app is much better for all of the feedback I've gotten from all the beta testers, but particularly you, Marco, amongst others. So I appreciate it.
Thanks. It was fun for me too.
Marco, did you talk to him about the emoji titles for the sections and settings?
Oh, come on.
I actually decided not to fight that fight because I thought it was kind of fun.
See, thank you.
I mean, it's definitely a Casey personality thing, but it's like they're too small to be.
They are. I will concede they are a little bit small. That I would agree with.
And then if you made them bigger, then it's like, what are these stray emoji doing in my UI? I mean, I know why they're there, but people who don't know you might be confused. Anyway,
whatever.
No, I thought they were like, when I first saw that, I'm like, oh, that's weird. But then it went from weird to good for me. Like I liked it because like I use some emoji in the Overcast interface.
Yeah, like the tips for great results, like the little the light bulb, that makes sense. But as section headings, like it throws off like the spacing. It's just not visually balanced.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think like the use of emoji in UI is still very young, and a lot of people will react negatively to it just because it's not the common case. But that doesn't mean it's wrong, or that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Like you wouldn't believe. Like most people didn't care, but I did get a few like really nasty comments when I switched to using emoji for things like indicating whether an episode is starred or whether it will stream. I use the star emoji or the cloud emoji in its little description label in those circumstances, and there were most people didn't care. I thought it was cool, but there were a few people who were viscerally offended by that I was using emoji in the interface. Like that was really offensive to a small number of people, but most people don't care because most people are not jerks.
I'm surprised people got that angry.
What do the people care about? What is their complaint exactly? Like that you didn't draw it yourself?
There's always a subset of people who are really mad at me because I don't hire a designer for most things.
Are these designers looking for work? Is that
I think sometimes. I mean, there is the whole phenomenon of like the unsolicited redesign, which I get all the time. And one thing, and by the way, Casey, you're going to get this too. And some of it is from us. But like the unsolicited redesign, the people doing it usually are not considering some design challenge or some factor that you have to include or some condition that they didn't think about. Usually you can't do their design or you shouldn't do their design because of some reason that they didn't consider that because you make the app. I will tell you what, I get a lot of Overcast unsolicited redesigns. I have never gotten one that was even remotely tempting of like, oh, I should do that. Like not even once, because they're usually, first of all, a lot of times they're just bad design. Like, anybody can call themselves a designer. Heck, I do. Like, there's no qualifications required to call yourself a designer. There's no like professional certification or anything. Like, you can call yourself whatever you want. And a lot of the designers are just bad. But also, like, so many of them are designs that like I look at it and I'm like, is this actually better? Like, who would think this is better? Like, or like this doesn't really account for this entire feature set over here that I know I can't cut. Or like, wow, this looks great on this size phone, but it will totally break on this other size phone, or something like that. Like, there's people basically. More about your app than anybody else. Like, what is necessary. All the design considerations and constraints that went into the current design to begin with. Why it is the way it is if you did put thought into it. So, like, ultimately, do stuff your own way. And that's why my solution has been to just slowly develop these skills myself. Because I was tired of working with other people who would try to make me do things that I would immediately be like, well, I can't do that because then I can't do this, or then this will break, or that won't work if I change the font size or whatever. Like, there were so many conditions constantly where I would somebody would suggest something, or I would hire a designer and they would do something. I'd be like, well, that's nice, but I can't do that, or I'd rather not do that because then that would create this other problem over here. So in conclusion, don't always listen to what everybody tells you, because ultimately take it all as suggestions, because ultimately you should know best, and maybe you don't yet, I don't know, but you should know best what your app should be.
Yeah, and with you and with everyone else, I have taken them as suggestions, but at this point I feel, maybe this is my own self-deprecating nature that has been on display for many years now, but I feel like I know enough to know what I don't know, and I know I'm not a terribly great designer, and so generally speaking, if someone comes to me and passionately says, oh, this is really jacked up, generally speaking, I'm going to listen to them. Now, there's some cases where I'm not. Like, so as an example, that whole cascading selection thing that I love so much, I'm going to ship that at least in part, and you and I were going back and forth about this earlier, Marco. I'm going to ship it at least in part, but I've toned it down and I've eliminated one of the places where it's used, because I think even though I find this clever and interesting and funny, I'm unconvinced that anyone else will. And so I'm going to ship it as is to see what happens. And then if it ends up that I need to pull it. It's no big deal. But and that's a very, very silly example, but it's an example. And like the emoji section headers, they're totally getting shipped that way. May regret it, but I'm definitely going to ship it that way because I like it and I think it's cool. And I'm sure it's been done in other apps before, but I can't think of any where it's been done. Maybe because everyone else is too serious about their jobs, but one way or
here's
another.
The thing. You have an advantage here in that you are independent. You have to answer to nobody else for this, except for, us. Yeah. but like, if you decide you want to ship emoji, damn it, you can ship emoji. Like, that's it. You can totally. You can communicate everything in the app via emoji if you really want to. No one's going to stop you. And you're using emoji for headers in a settings table view is going to affect nobody. It's going to lose you probably no sales, and it's fine. Like, so if it makes you happy, ship the damn thing. Like, you're making this app to make yourself happy. Like, if that's what makes you happy, do it. And it might even reward you. Like when I shipped 1.0 for Overcast, like there was a whole bunch of personality in the app and various microcopy here and there. And at the time, that was not common to see. I honestly, I think it still isn't. But I was worried that would make my app appear unprofessional, or that I wasn't taking it seriously enough, or anything. I had no idea how people would take that. It was a risk, but it paid off. People took it really well, and I've lost some people over the years who didn't want their app to have any personality. But certainly those people are probably the minority, dramatically so. And so, yeah, you might have like one person like John who is really weirded out by your emoji settings headers, but chances are it's not going to be a majority, even close. And it might even make your app seem even more friendly and even better, and it might even cause people to buy your app even more.
Yeah, and another example of this is I tend to be pretty verbose when it comes to the copy in the app.
Oh, dear God, yes.
And at first, when you were beating me up about the copy, I was like, well, I don't want this to sound like Marco's app. And that wasn't at all what you were trying to do, but that's how it felt at first. And some of those first iterations that you had suggested, I was like, I like the spirit of where he's going with this, but I think I should take it a slightly different direction. And then toward the end, I think I like to think, maybe it's just me lying to myself, but I think because of, I would try this version, which was a lot shorter, but wasn't exactly what you said. And then you would say, okay, well, what about that? And then I tried that. Okay, well, what about this? And by the end of this back and forth, we ended up with something that I don't think screams Marco. I don't know that necessarily screams Casey, but I do think that it is better for the user than where I started by a lot. And so that is another example of some back and forth where I could have taken what you had initially sent exactly as it was, and it would have been an improvement. It would not have been bad, but it just didn't feel exactly the way I wanted it to feel. And I'm glad that you were willing and patient enough to go back and forth with me about a lot of this copy, because I do quite like where we ended up, because it was way too much. And I didn't really see it until you pointed it out, but once you pointed it out, immediately I was like, oh yeah, this is way too much.
And I have you down to, I think, only one semicolon left.
Semicolons don't hurt you. I swear.